9th, 2024 to order. Roll call, please. Ms. Zavada. I started the meeting before she was there to call the roll, but we will get started.
Ms. Applegate?
Here.
Ms. Kenworthy?
Here.
Ms. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Reed?
Here.
Dr. Varda?
I would like to thank the live simultaneous Spanish interpreters for joining us today. We are live streaming our meeting. Please stand and join me this afternoon in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve today's meeting agenda?
I move to approve today's agenda as presented in board docs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for today's meeting of October 9, 2024 as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Zavada.
Ms. Applegate?
Yes.
Ms. Kenworthy?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
The agenda is approved. On September 12, 2024, the board held the first regular meeting of the 2024-2025 school year that included the following topics: an informational update from its committee, the Technology and Data Privacy Advisory Committee, TDPAC, report. Also a study and a vote on the contract renewal for supplementary student transportation to address the increase in requests to transport students who need individual or specialized transportation, and an opportunity for Superintendent Dorland as well as each board member to share their monthly update. I encourage you to watch the recording of the regular meeting to learn more about these topics. You can also visit our board page on the Jeffco Public Schools website. There you will find a host of information and links to both board docs and our live stream platforms. We'll now move to our study session agenda. I do want to note for our audiences tonight that the board will be taking a vote tonight on agenda item 3.01, which is related to the district's DUIP and schools' UIPs, which is the Unified Improvement Plans. The reason for this vote is that the CDE deadline, which is prior to the board's regular meeting on October 17th. We will take action directly following the study of this item. Now I'll move us to our first agenda topic for the afternoon, the upcoming November elections. The purpose of this topic is for the board to discuss ballot initiatives that have a direct or tangential impact on Jeffco Public Schools or K-12 education generally. Hilltop Public Solutions is joining us virtually tonight to support the board's conversation. Hilltop is not here representing any of the initiatives on the ballot, nor are they here to persuade us in any way. The board should be discerning in taking official positions, and we should base any decision we make to take a position solely on the impact the initiative will have on Jeffco Public Schools. Should the board decide to take an official position, that will require a vote, and it can be added to our regular board meeting agenda on October 21. Before I begin our discussion tonight with Mr. Craig Hughes with Hilltop, who joins us virtually tonight, I'm going to do something a little unusual, and I'm going to ask Julie Tullison, who is here, to give us some words of precaution before we start.
Thank you, President Parker. It's just really a quick reminder. It's an election year, right? And emotions run high. And just kind of a reminder to board and public about where we are, given that we have this interesting law we navigate right in the space about how you, as a school board, engage at election time. And the biggest thing that comes up in this space is Colorado's Fair Campaign Practices Act, right? And prohibits school districts and school boards from expending monies from any source, making any contribution to urge electors to vote one way or another on a ballot initiative. And money from any source is construed really broadly and includes our resources like our website, our email server, our efforts of staff, which is what we don't have campaign signs on properties, all the things. So anything that suggests that lack of neutrality So first of all, I just want to be clear, both for you all and the public, there's been no money expended in the preparation of this presentation today. Also, we know that school districts are allowed to have factually neutral summaries available to the public, much like the Blue Book we all receive in our mail, and that's the spirit in which this presentation is made available to you today. And I appreciate that because there's obviously an educational component at election time too. But against all of that, no resources, fully neutral background, we know we also have language in the Fair Campaign Practice Act that allows you to pass a resolution to support or oppose a position on state and local ballot issues. And it allows district staff to provide that incidental support, like to help draft the resolution and to get it up in board docs without that running afoul, even if the resolution is supporting a position. So I just want you to know, it's kind of, right, it's this strange needle thread that the law has, and I think we're paying real due diligence to it, but I wanted you all to know why. Because even though you can pass those resolutions, even the resolution can't sort of turn into its own advocacy campaign. We're allowed to post it in the places where we post any resolution you adopt, and for us that tends to be board docs, but it doesn't become, here's the big splash on the front of the Jeffco webpage. So in that light, I'd say, just remembering that you can decide to take a position, and if you do, we'll prepare a resolution and it would be on next week's board agenda. And it wouldn't otherwise become sort of a board advocacy campaign of sorts, right? And so the easiest path always is to stay focused on those issues that have a direct impact on the district, like the position you took regarding the Tabor ballot issue that the county has on the ballot. So, and without further delay, I will turn it over to the real experts.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Tollefson. Mr. Hughes, welcome. It's nice to see you. If you want to start this conversation off, I think you have some presentation to show us.
I do. Should I share my screen, or do you have that handy?
Mr. Hughes, I think it's helpful if you display it for our listening public. Please also know that board members do have access to the document in board docs. And for our listening public, it's also available online.
Fantastic. I am sharing my screen here. Now I am hopefully sharing my screen. Is it working?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, fantastic. So I appreciate the legal warning, and I'm going to do my best. I think Dragnet was the show, just the facts, ma'am, here, and a neutral description. The 2024 Colorado ballot is an interesting one in that there are no statewide offices in terms of U.S. Senate, Governor, Attorney General, Secretary of State, State Treasurer. Those are up in 2026. So we have President, we have a CU Regent statewide race, and those are the two big statewide. And then we get into a large number of ballot measures. So we miss kind of some of those normal elected office statewide. But we more than make up for that with 14 ballot measures. There are seven constitutional amendments on the ballot, and there are 7 statutory changes that are proposed. Some of the statutory changes were referred by the legislature, as were some of the amendments. Some were gathered by the signature process. As just a reminder, the constitutional amendments require 55% of the vote to be implemented. So those 7 have a higher bar. In addition to the statewide ballot, we have the Jefferson County ballot. What I've pulled up here is simply per the Gray Book, and you all know this, but to be clear, these then are only the measures that have a Tabor fiscal taxpayer impact. So I pulled these out of the Gray Book. We obviously have countywide issue 1A, which would allow the county to retain revenue, so what is commonly known as debrucing. And then local tax measures. Lakewood has a very similar debrucing revenue retention measure. Littleton has a marijuana tax for homeless and public safety. Westminster has a sales tax for firefighting. Then the Fairmont Fire District, also for firefighting. Foothills Park and Rec to extend the life of a mill for capital projects. And Ken Carroll Ranch Metro District retain the current mills for capital infrastructure. So those are the county measures on top of the statewide measures. Again, only those that are mandated to be in the so-called gray book for Jefferson County voters per the rules. There are other measures that do not have a fiscal impact. So we have a very, very long and full ballot that goes into the mail as early as Friday. So ballots will start arriving. So within the 14 statewide measures, I'm happy and have information on all 14 of them to some extent, but pulled out the ones that are more relevant or potentially relevant to Jeffco schools, to the school district, to the school board. So the first is Proposition 131, which is sort of called Top 4 RCV or ranked choice voting. So 131 was petitioned onto the ballot through the signature process. It is statutory, not constitutional, so 50% plus one, and it will go into effect. I've got the full ballot language here, but essentially create a new all-candidate primary election for U.S. Senate, House, Governor, Attorney General, Board of Regents, State Board of Education, Colorado State Legislature, allows voters to vote for any candidate regardless of their political party, and then the top four move on to the general. So the current system, as you know, there's a Democratic, Republican primary, the one Democrat who wins that primary, the one Republican who wins that primary, and then other parties that have ballot status move forward to the general election. This would change that there would be one election with voters being able to pick from the list of candidates. The top four vote getters, regardless of political party, could be Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Unity candidate, Green, whatever it is. Those top four move to the general election, and then there is one vote. Voters vote once, and then they go into the ranked choice voting process to then select the winner of the ballot. So this would very much change Colorado's elections, how they're run. There was a statutory change late in the 2024 legislative session that would postpone implementation so that this would not go into effect until 2028, and it would not take place in the 2026 elections. There were some county clerks that had some issues, but that did pass the legislature very, very late in the session. So as of right now, if it were to pass, Prop 131 would go into effect in 2028. I want to flag on here where I listed supporters of Prop 131. I say Common Cause Colorado. That is not correct. They are not a supporter. Since I wrote this up, a few other announcements have been made for supporters. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman, and Colorado Springs Mayor Yemi Mobawale came out in favor of Proposition 131. So that's in addition to the list. But the governor, League of Women Voters, and Colorado Voters First, Kent Theory has been in the press quite a lot about this as the main funder and supporter of Proposition 131. The Democratic Party, as a party, took a vote, and the executive committee voted to oppose that, as did the Republican Party and labor unions. If you look at the public funding documents available of who has put in money on the opposition side, it has generally come from labor unions. So those are the general pros and cons. There are also some county clerks that are opponents of this. If you look at the main con side, the clerks will say that it'll be difficult to implement and could cause some issues there. Again, some of that was addressed with this legislation that delayed implementation to 2028. That is the basic setup of Proposition 131 with a list of the pros, the cons, the supporters, and the opponents. Does anyone have any questions that they want me to address on 131?
Yes, Mr. Hughes, I have just one clarification. I just want to make sure it's understood that this does not, if passed, this would not apply down at the county level, correct?
That is my understanding, correct? I was researching that, and I will get the answer to you for sure, but I did not think it.
Thank you.
All right, terrific. We will go to a second measure, Proposition KK. This is an excise tax on guns and ammunition for veterans, kids' mental health, and domestic violence organizations. So this was referred through the state legislature. And when you think about supporters and opponents, almost every Democrat, I think there were 2 that did not support this, voted yes to put this on the ballot. Every single Republican voted no, but it did get the necessary votes to be referred to the ballot so that voters will have a chance to vote on it. The main supporters have been the Colorado Coalition Against Gun Violence, Colorado Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Violence Free Colorado, Everytown USA. The pro argument is that critical service funding, a lot that has come through the federal government, has dried up, and these organizations have a critical need for funding. And this measure would ensure that the firearm industry contributes to mitigating the consequence of gun violence and provides much needed funding for these organizations. The con side says this places an additional burden on law-abiding gun owners and businesses, that firearms might become less accessible for responsible owners because of the additional cost, and it sets a precedent for taxing constitutionally protected rights via the Second Amendment. So this is a 6.5% tax on guns and ammunition, and again, that this would go to specific entities and organizations. So if you look at the language, go to mental health services, including military veterans, at-risk use, school safety, and gun violence prevention. Because school safety was included in the ballot language and school safety is part of the funding, we thought it was relevant for you all to have the information on this. Again, the main supporters tend to be the domestic violence organizations, those advocating for more benefits for mental health. The opposition, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, is firmly against. The Republican legislators who all voted against it are also no. There's no website that I could find for a no campaign to list other opponents, but those are very public and prominent opposition endorsers. Any questions on Proposition KK? All right.
Hang on.
Amendment.
I don't have a question. If we're looking at things that we might endorse or not endorse, I think that this provides mental health funding for our students, which I continue to hear is an issue. And as I do school visits and, I talk to administrators, mental health remains top of mind. And so I think that's something that provides funding for mental health care for our students might be something worth discussing.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on, Amendment 80, referred to as the Choice in Education Act. Shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution establishing the right to school choice for children in kindergarten through 12th grade, and in connection therewith, declaring school choice includes neighborhood, charter, and private schools, homeschooling, open enrollment options, and future innovations in education. So, and this is one of the constitutional amendments. This would require 55% of the vote to get in and would be enshrined in Colorado's Constitution. This was, if you look at the supporters, this was petitioned onto the ballot. Advance Colorado was the main supportive entity at the time that pushed that forward. I'm sorry, I went the wrong direction. So their arguments are this encourages different education models to coexist, which fosters innovation. This ensures parents can choose the best educational path for their children and empowers families. So that's the pro side. And again, the supporters, Advance Colorado, the Colorado Association for Private Schools, former Governor Bill Owens, Ready Colorado, the Independence Institute are all prominent supporters. The opposition side says this risks diverting public funds away from public schools, which could negatively impact those without school choice, could widen the gap between wealthy and low-income students. Public schools may suffer from reduced funding, and this would ensure parents can choose. That's a repeat from the other side. We will delete that there. The opponents, as of the writing of this, Colorado Education Association, the Colorado Fiscal Institute, and Stand for Children. Since I wrote this, Great Ed Colorado, a prominent kind of public school advocacy organization, has also come out in opposition. So those are the kind of the main yes and no sides to Amendment 80. Any questions on that?
Mr. Hughes, I do believe that CASB has come out as an opponent of this one, and also CASE, and you did mention CEA, but I think there are two other educational organizations that have come out in opposition to this.
Got it. Thank you for the update. There's certainly been a lot of movement since I originally created the, but you are correct. I just looked that up. So you are correct that CASE and CASB have taken that position.
Thank you.
Okay.
1 second again. I'm
sorry.
just going to say this is another one that I think that we should consider because it directly impacts funding for our students.
Well, and that was one of my clarifications, just kind of making sure I truly understand. When we say that ensuring the right, that means that the money provided by the state for those students would follow the students to those schools, correct? So it's not just they can choose, it's just that it's that the public money, the taxpayer dollars provided by taxpayers to the state would follow them potentially to private schools. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we have another revenue measure, Proposition JJ, which is tax revenue for water. This is, again, kind of what is known as a debrucing measure. Without raising taxes, may the state keep and spend all sports tax revenue above voter-approved limits to fund water conservation and protection projects instead of reducing revenue to casinos. So this is a follow-up to previous measure that established sports betting with the money going to water and conservation causes. So this would allow the state, because revenue came in above the projections, this would allow the state to keep that revenue. Proponents say this would help address water scarcity, benefit ag, environment, urban areas, uses the surplus revenue efficiently. Supporters include the governor, the legislature who referred this, Colorado Gaming Association, the Sierra Club, Extinction Rebellion, Green Latinos. On the con, the strict adherence to Tabor would say that this is a tax increase because it eliminates refunds that would otherwise be returned, and the state should operate within voter-approved budgets without keeping surplus revenue. That said, when I was writing this, I could not find public opponents specifically to JJ. There were people that were more, as I said, kind of the very strict adherence to Tabor principles, but JJ itself did not have opposition. There was no opposition filed committee, and as of this morning, there still was no opposition filed committee to Proposition JJ.
Quick question, Mr. Hughes, and I apologize for all these questions. Is there anything funding conservation and water projects now through tax streams or through?
Yes. The original measure that passed this, all of the sports gaming revenue goes to those water conservation projects. So this would merely allow the state to keep that which has come in above their projected goal, what is considered excess revenue above projection.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Those were the measures that I pulled out, but I'm going to go back to the top of my presentation. And again, look at, there were 14. So many of these were very less controversial, shall we say. But Amendment G, property tax adjustment for veterans with disabilities. This is what is called kind of a cleanup amendment that was not previously included. Then Amendment H, creating independent judicial commission board. Amendment I, exceptions for bail in the case of first-degree murder. So this would remove the ability for bail for first-degree murder convictions. Amendment J, which removes the ban on same-sex marriages. Colorado currently has a ban on same-sex marriages in the Constitution. Amendment J would remove that ban. Amendment K modifies election deadlines, giving a little more time to prepare for elections. Amendment 79 is a constitutional right to abortion. We talked about Amendment 80. Then statutory changes, we talked about JJ. We talked about KK. Proposition 127 is a ban on so-called trophy hunting, mostly aimed at, I think, bobcat lynxes is 127. 128 changes parole eligibility and makes it tougher for certain offenders to gain parole. Proposition 129 changes qualifications for veterinary services, makes it easier, adds classifications to make it easier for people to provide veterinary level care. Proposition 130 provides $350 million per year increase in funding for law enforcement that comes out of, again, Tabor surplus revenue from the state. And Proposition 131 we talked about. So I just wanted to go back to the beginning and note, again, there are 14 measures. We talked about several of them and kind of point out the others that we didn't and see if there were any there that you wanted to raise for discussion purposes.
I have one more question, Mr. Hughes. I'm sorry. Under Amendment K on the modification of the election deadlines, is that to extend the time in which people can campaign, or is that to extend the time for people to basically sign up and provide signatures? And does that affect all elections in the state?
I do not know if it affects all elections, but it is more to give the clerks and the Secretary of States more time to prepare for the election.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. I think we've identified two of the ballot initiatives that could affect us in Jefferson County. That was Proposition KK and Amendment 80. Board members, is there any other of these initiatives that you think we should discuss as being important for our school district? Okay, then I'm just going to start with Amendment 80. I personally think this is one that the school district should take a position on. As Director Applegate said, the repercussions from this amendment could be that the taxpayer dollars that are currently going to public education could go to private schools if they follow the students that way, and that could impact severely and significantly our district schools, District 1 schools here and their funding. Any other comments on Amendment 80 from the board? Director Reed?
My other concern is that this can be used in educational settings where there is no oversight of curriculum and quality and all of that. I think when you're spending taxpayer dollars, there should be oversight of those institutions.
I agree with Director Reed, and I would say in the future, as we try to work with our state legislature around increasing funding for education, that would mean increases in that funding would essentially be more dispersed across different types of options, where I think public tax dollars needs to go towards publicly funded and overseen schools.
I should never tell you I'm done with questions on this, Mr. Hughes. Private schools, I assume, includes schools that might be associated with a religion. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm really proud of the work we do in Jeffco to work with our charters, and I think we have a really, Aaron and I got to attend one last week and celebrate a festival with them, and I am constantly impressed by the work that they do, and I think the charters and the fact of choice is really positive for our families, and I think we offer a lot of that. I strongly feel that public taxpayer dollars should not go to private schools, and that's my personal opinion, but that is my You know, to say that I support the right for parents to choose their education, absolutely. But I think if taxpayer dollars are going to it, it needs to be a public school.
I'm also not supportive of this just because I don't think that a constitutional amendment is the right place to address this conversation.
Dr. Varda, do you have any comments? Okay. All right, so shall we indicate then an interest in voting on a board resolution in opposition next week? We could vote on that. Can we get a kind of thumbs up if we're in agreement to vote on that next week?
Great.
Okay.
We'll take some next steps as staff. I know some other school boards have done the same thing. We can look to some of what they've drafted, and we'll get you something, Mary, to review, and then have it ready for your board packet for next week.
Okay, good. The other initiative that was mentioned is Proposition KK, the excise tax on firearms that would provide mental health service and school safety. Any conversation on comments on that?
I would support us being a supporter of Proposition KK.
Okay, is there interest in taking a vote on support for this initiative next week? Okay, so we can also do that one for next week?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. We really appreciate it. I think we got our questions answered, and we're ready for next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that leads us to our next agenda item. I'm pleased to welcome the Jeffco Student Leadership Board. We are very excited to hear an update on their experiences, engagements, and activities planned for the school year. The Jeffco Student Leadership Board, known as JSLB, is in its second year. It is a diverse group of high school students designed to represent every high school in Jeffco. Our students' experience in the JSLB is intended to enhance their education and leadership development and showcase the brilliance of today's student generation to prepare them for the future beyond high school graduation. Before I hand this over to to Ms. Pena and our talented students, Superintendent Dorland, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, President Parker. I am pleased to welcome you all to this conversation with our Board of Education this evening. I've had the pleasure of knowing some of you, not all of you, because some of you are new, over the last year or so as we've developed this program, opportunities to visit our state capitol, to talk with you about what we do in Jeffco, to serve our students and our families. And I'm just thrilled that you get to come and share your wisdom, your voice, and your thoughts with our Board of Education. I also want to thank Ms. Pena and her team for everything they do to support our Jeffco Student Leadership Board. And I don't want to take up any more time because I really want our board to have the opportunity to interact with our amazing young leaders. Ms. Pena?
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Directors and Superintendent Dorland. It's always an honor to spend time with you all. I am Tara Pena. I'm the Chief of Family and Community Partnerships and one of the district sponsors for the Jeffco Student Leadership Board. On behalf of my team and myself, I just want to say thank you for the tremendous support that you extended to the Leadership Board in our inaugural year last year. Excited to walk you through the successes that we had last year and what we have planned for this year. But as always, thank you for your tremendous support. So we're thrilled to be here this evening to share about JSLB's successes from last year and the exciting work we have planned for year two. The JSLB was created to empower students from across the district to take on active leadership roles, collaborate with district leaders, and contribute to meaningful decision-making processes that directly impact their schools and communities. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce some of the incredible student leaders who have been instrumental in shaping the success of JSLB. So students will introduce themselves by sharing their name, their school, their grade, and a fun fact about themselves. We'll start with Bree.
Hi, I'm Bree. I go to Evergreen High School. I'm a senior this year. And the fun fact about me is that my favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip.
Hello, I'm Anissa Valdez. I go to Green Mountain. I go to Green Mountain High School. I'm a senior, and I like going on picnics.
Hi, my name is Noah Morgan. I'm a senior at Golden High School. A fun fact about me is that these shoes are not as comfortable as I anticipated.
Hi, my name is Isis Trinilla. I go to Jefferson County Open School, and my cat is named after Bob Marley.
Hi. Oh, there you go. So I'm Alexa. Oh, I didn't press it? Okay, sorry. So I'm Alexa Jimenez. I'm a junior at Witchers High School, and also a fun fact is that I'm Costa Rican. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Zaylisha. I'm Zaylisha, and I'm a junior at Arvada High School, and I've done dance for 5 years.
Hi, Board. My name's Tom Wallace. I go to Rawson Valley High School. I'm a senior, and fall is my favorite season.
Awesome. So going into our vision, the Jeffco Student Leadership Board is a diverse group of high school student representatives from each Jeffco high school. We are committed to fostering positive change in Jeffco public schools and in our surrounding community through student leadership development. This change includes working in service of others and being a voice, representing students in our schools. Our vision is to create an experience that brings together education, leadership, and the brilliance of today's student generation to prepare them for the future beyond high school. Together, the JSLB team creates an environment that encourages collaboration and empowers all students to be leaders in their own lives. By shaping decisions that directly impact the education and well-being of all Jeffco students, its members provide student voice and insights to Superintendent Dorland and her team that help inform their leadership and decision-making.
As JSLB, we have 3 key objectives. 1, amplifying student voice. 2, promoting collaborative communication between student, school, and district leadership. 3, fostering student engagement and leadership. The strongest impact on my journey for leadership and my activism is the student voice objective. By incorporating diverse perspectives, critical thinking, feedback, and improvement on our school and district leaders, by focusing on our name, strength, and needs. Sharing all student voices is advocating not for only my community, but voices who are not always heard. Voices of underrepresented groups speaking on behalf of all students in all perspectives, not just my school, but our diverse large school district.
Thank you again, Board, for having us. As mentioned earlier, we're going to kind of talk about some cool things about JSLB, and I'm so grateful to be here as a returning member. We worked a lot behind the scenes, elevating student voice and inspiring impact, but we also worked really hard to make sure that JSLB was known throughout the district, with many of the things that we'll get into later, and making sure that we were visible. And what you may not know about us is that we're a very tight-knit group of students. This past year, we formed an amazing, inspiring, supportive community, people that we all know that we can go to share good news or to just like be a helping hand, which is awesome. And I'm so privileged to call these people some of my closest friends, and as well as mentors. And we encourage each other every day to be the best version of ourselves. Through this opportunity, we've got to meet and work with some really cool people. You all, the board, Superintendent Dorland, the cabinet, and other people like legislators. And we're so grateful for the investment that you all have put into us. And we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you.
So going into our accomplishments from year 1, I'm grateful to have been part of JSLB last year when it was officially launched. We had an amazing first year, which is why I want to take some time to highlight the amazing work we've done. This list is not an entirety of everything that we've accomplished last year. However, it's a list of some of the accomplishments we are most proud of. So, one of my favorites is the Winter Wear Initiative. At the beginning of the spring semester, each JSLB member collaborated with their respective schools to organize a week-long clothing drive that supports low-income and homeless families in the Jefferson County District. By the end of the drive, we were able to provide winter clothing to over 1,100 families.
As someone who was deeply involved in the planning and execution of this initiative, I am proud of our impact and look forward to helping even more families stay warm this winter season. Some other things that we did was visit the state capitol. We had a great conversation with District 4 State Representative Tim Hernandez, and we were also on the Elevate Education podcast, which was one of my favorites.
I'm going to take the ball from Bree here and talk about what might have been one of our biggest accomplishments. The hosting and planning of the inaugural Jeffco Student Leadership Board was done for students, by students, JSLB. And we have put so much time and effort in towards properly orchestrating a really impactful conference. Last year's inaugural conference, which we worked so hard on, was a huge success. We brought together over 200 students from different schools across the Jeffco district, and we circulated around our core themes in shaping the future and leading with purpose. Something I found really impactful, and many of us did find impactful, was we kind of kicked the conference off with a keynote speaker, Madalena DeAndrea. She had a really powerful presentation on resilience, mental health, and it set an inspiring tone that kind of lasted throughout the rest of the conference. We also gave students access to over 20 break rooms relating to mental health, managing anxiety, balancing academic pressures, things like that. It was a catered event, which was also very exciting. And at the end, all the attendees got the chance to reflect and sort of give us input on how we can make the conference better for this year. We are so excited to announce this year's Jeffco Student Leadership Conference. So mark your dates. It's going to be on April 25th, 2025. We are so proud of the work we did last year, and we know for a fact we can do better, and we want your help to do that, and we're so excited. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Isis. So with any, did I go too far? Oh, I'm going to jump us around just a little bit if that's okay. I'm going to go to lessons learned, and then we'll come back to leading forward for this year. So I just went forward one more slide. So lessons learned. So with any new initiative or program, we have the opportunity to reflect. And there were definitely some lessons learned within our first year as a group. So as we reflected last year, we identified some opportunities for growth for year 2. So these challenges that you see highlight some key areas of opportunity, which will help us strengthen the board's impact and engagement for this year. So the first was consistent high school engagement. So one of the early challenges that we experienced was achieving consistent engagement in JSLB across all high schools. So while some schools were more active in participating, other schools struggled to find a student to represent their school, which initially impacted our initial reach and the overall impact of the board. Thankfully, this year we have every school represented to start the year, and we believe that interest will only continue to grow. JSLB awareness and visibility across Jeffco. So ensuring that students, staff, and the broader Jeffco community were aware of JSLB was a hurdle in the beginning, as with anything new, right? Like, what is that? What are you talking about? You know, it makes sense to us and students, but being sense makers and ensuring visibility was really important and will continue to be a priority. So to boost visibility this year, we're focusing on more robust communication strategies, including social media campaigns that our students will help to plan in partnership with communications. We'll have greater partnerships with school leadership, and the students will have student-led awareness initiatives at their schools just to promote that students do have a voice that is being brought to you through the amazing leaders serving on the JSLB. So student leaders balancing priorities. So many of the student leaders serving on the board are highly involved in a variety of activities, including academics, athletics, extracurriculars, and a lot of them have outside of commitments like work or priorities at home. So this sometimes made it a challenge for students to fully engage, especially second semester when we had some really good momentum and everybody said, oh my gosh, what is JSLB? I wanted to spend time with them. This is an amazing group. Really helping students to balance and prioritize, because what we know about our student leaders is they will say yes. They want to be visible and they want to lead and serve proudly. and that could present, some time management challenges for them as well. So that is something when we think about leadership development and helping to balance priorities, are conversations that we've already begun to have as we scope out their work and their leadership opportunities for the year. And then finally, school representation and participation at the Spring Leadership Conference. So we saw varying levels of school representation and participation at some of our events, like the Winterwear Initiative and the Spring Conference. Some schools didn't participate or struggled to send students, while others fully engaged. Again, it was an inaugural year. I think with the visibility that we've had, your support, our school leaders had the opportunity to learn from students and hear from students at our leadership launch this year. I don't anticipate that continuing to be a challenge. But given all of that visibility, we will continue to make certain that we're marketing and promoting the work and asking for school and district partnership to promote the work that this wonderful group of leaders is doing. All right, so our leading and learning focus for 24-25. And so one thing that folks might not know or might not be fully aware of is that JSLB is a paid internship. So these students are actually on, they're Jeffco employees. So they didn't do their vector training though, so I'm here to tattle on them. They showed up on the vector training mandatory list, and I said these while they're Jeffco employees, they play a little bit of a different role, but they are on a paid internship. And so the JSLB internship component is designed to invest in our student leaders by offering hands-on experiences that enhance leadership development and to really help grow them as catalysts for change within their school communities. So through tools like Emergenetics, which is the strengths finder, if you will, or the leadership strengths tool that students are taking for this year. We actually have an in-person board meeting tomorrow that they're going to spend some time really digging into understanding their strengths as leaders. We believe this will help them gain deeper insights into their personal strengths and learn how to apply them in various leadership scenarios. Additionally, students will have the opportunity to better understand how Jeffco's governance operates, giving them a platform to engage with district leaders, contributing to the decision-making processes, and making a tangible impact on policies that affect their schools. And so at our first meeting of the year, they actually saw your pictures and spent some time understanding as board directors which parts of the district that you serve and where are your areas, and really understanding what board and policy governance looks like and means. And so that's just a really important part of understanding their roles as ambassadors. They really understand that they are sense makers. They are actually sought out across the organization by various roles, community members, teachers, school leaders, and we want to make certain that they feel really informed to be able to speak on behalf of the district, and that people also realize they have access to you all, to cabinet, to key decision makers within our community in some ways that other parts, other folks in our community don't always have. And so they are very much influential leaders. And we're making certain that they have the skills and the tools that they needed to navigate the different hats and different roles that they wear while serving on the board. So it's gearing up to be an exciting year. We have a lot of opportunities planned, just as last year, for you to have some continued engagement with the JSLB. But now you've heard from me a lot. I'm going to turn it back over to our students.
Okay, so good evening, board. My name is Alexa Jimenez, and I represent Woodridge High School. I'm one of the new students on the Jeffco Student Leadership Board, and I'm so happy to be here. I decided to apply to the board because I believe it will help me grow as a leader while also making a positive impact in my school community. As you can see here, the blue represents our returning members, while the pink indicates the many new students joining us this year. We met 2 weeks ago, and I can already tell this is going to be a fantastic group of student leaders in Jeffco.
Hi, my name is Elisha. I hope you guys are having a good day. This is my first year being on the board. I represent Arvada High School. The reason I decided to apply for the student board was to make sure that student voices are heard and not overlooked or forgotten. These students are our future. After spending a year at my school, I listened to all of their concerns. They spoke of their challenges that they faced throughout the school year. and shared ideas of what could have made a difference. Many of them struggled to find the right voice for their needs, and that left them feeling unheard. That's when I realized that I wanted to take action and make a change, which led me to JSLB. And actually, that's one of the things that JSLB does. During our first meeting of this year, just a few weeks ago, the rest of the board and I highlighted some key concerns and challenges that our student body was facing. Across all schools and grade levels, we identified some of the following issues around the area that need greater attention and support. One major concern was college, career, and trade readiness. Students expressed that there was a need for a place where they can go for help, guidance, and resources. Another significant issue that came up was student safety. Just a few weeks ago, there was a SWAT near our school. Many students were wondering if school was truly a safe place for them. I saw how it impacted my classmates. Many of them left school or didn't even show up at all. It practically felt empty in our school. It raises a critical question. Are we safe in school? We don't want students to have to worry about if they should come to school where they learn. It's important to keep in mind how students are feeling and if they're feeling safe.
Yeah, so the other three things we talked about at our meeting were mental health awareness. Obviously, this is something we will continue to prioritize. And we've heard that from you all that it's something that you really want to make sure is ensuring students have access to mental health resources and have safe spaces to talk. Another thing is student advocacy and civic engagement, making sure that students have the opportunity to get involved in their communities and to set them up for the future. And then school-to-school collaboration. So this conference this past April, we had the opportunity to brainstorm ideas to better the student experience in Jeffco with the people that attended the conference. And after this, I talked to some of the students from other schools, and I was fascinated by the fact that they thought talking to people from other schools was the coolest thing ever, because I had gotten used to it being on JSLB and having being able to talk to these people immediately. I can text them or something. But these people that I was talking to really liked the fact that being able to collaborate with other students from other schools. And so this is just something that we would like to prioritize because we focus on so much sport rivalries and all of this rather than collaboration between actual schools and getting out of your kind of group of students that you know.
Again, thank you for your time this evening. JSLB has been a great experience. As a returning student, I've appreciated your leadership as the board and superintendent. We have 3 questions for you tonight. The first one is, what is the board's hope for what might be a different? Let me start over. What is the board's hope for what might be different for Jeffco High School students aligned with post-secondary access and opportunities through High School Reimagined initiative?
We'll go one by one. Okie doke, that sounds good. Thank you so much. This is so exciting. I cannot tell you. For me personally, just seeing you launch last year and seeing how far you've come, and now you feeling your oats and you're understanding your position, and it's wonderful. Does anybody on the board here like to start off answering this first question? Director Reed?
I think one of my biggest hopes is that our students will really be able to take advantage of apprenticeships and internships. I think that they can help you obviously figure out what it is that you want to do. They can also be really great for figuring out what you don't want to do. And the sooner you find that out, the better, because it changes the path that you take throughout high school. And so that would be probably my biggest hope for you.
Do you want each of us? My hope is that the opportunities that you have are not necessarily defined by the high school that you're in. So because that is so restricting, some kids want to do certain things and they can't because it's only offered at other high schools. So my hope in our reimagining is that it almost works like a little more like campuses where opportunities are that you can go and get, and we have a way to get you there and support that kind of desire that you have to have programs even when they don't exist in the place you are.
Thanks for being here, y'all, and for your questions. My hope as we look at High School Reimagine is that we're really including student voice. We know students are asking for more CTE experiences, but I want to make sure that we're honoring which experiences the students are most interested in, and being informed in our choices, and so that we can be responsive to interests, because from year to year and over time, people's interests or desires for certain kinds of classes may shift and change. And so I'm hopeful that we have a lot of student voice informing what it is that we're putting effort into bringing into some of our High School Reimagine classes.
I want to echo that we really appreciate you guys being here. This is the highlight, and it's wonderful to hear the voices and to hear the goods and bads and all of it. My hope is that the education you receive in our schools is truly preparing you for what's next, and whatever that next step is for you, and that through the campus vision and through student voice and the opportunities, we can help students to identify those options and provide them real skills that translate, whether it's career, college, trade, you name it. That's my hope.
I would also say that Director Kenworthy and I were at the Career Expo today. I don't know how many of you went in your 10th grade year. That was really exciting to see that they're growing in their opportunities for students, not just to see that here's a company that you might one day want to work for, but just also finding out how can you get information now, can you get an internship, can you get some apprentice work, can you actually try it out, as Dr. Reed said, to find out, do you like it or don't you like it? And as far as the student voice, there are two things that I really hope we continue to work on. One is your in school-to-school interaction, so that you can find out what are they doing at other schools that would be great to do at your school, and what can you suggest to the other schools. And that's going to help us when we do High School Reimagine. What things do we want to have available at every school? So not just that we have transportation that you could get to Warren Tech or to some other campus, but that we are making sure certain core classes and opportunities are available everywhere. And the second thing I'm wondering, I think you guys have probably started to learn it, but I think it's important you know the different levels of authority. So if you want to make a change in your school, and I'll just go to what's happened in the past, the styrofoam trays, get rid of them for environmental purposes, and where do you go to get that to happen? What can you do at your school just by telling the principal you're interested in getting some staff member to help you with it? So what is done and decided at the school level? What is decided at the superintendent's level or her cabinet or Ms. Pena? And then what goes all the way up to the school board? Because we always want to hear what you're interested in and what your questions are and what your desires are, but we are not always the ones that make the decision, because we are a governance board, and so we don't get involved in the day-to-day activities, but we want to know what you want so that we can work with the superintendent and get those things to happen. So this is off to a great start. Thank you. And we're ready for question number 2, I think.
Thank you so much. I would like to just say thank you again, and I love how all of you focused on, for all students, the appreciation of access to resources and encouraging student voice. But for our second question is, how do you envision student voice and leadership contribution to the goals of the district this year?
I'll start out. The student voice, certainly you guys coming in front of us and giving your presentations is a big plus for us. But also encourage your school peers, the students there, to come to school boards and take part in the public comment. Because if there's something that is affecting your school specifically, or all schools, all high schools, and you think that the board needs to know it, come and talk at our meetings, because we really listen and we hear it at the same time the superintendent hears it and the cabinet members hear it, and that's a really good way to get the ball rolling on some things. So I would encourage that a lot.
I would echo what President Parker said. I think all student voices are really important to us. And I also want to echo what President Parker said about the role of the Board of Ed, right? Because we can't just go out and make decisions for the superintendent. That's her job and her role. And when we think about goals, I'm messing this up. Words are hard. I think it's a communication, right? It's a back and forth, because I would also encourage, like, our goals are out there on the website, and I'm quite certain my senior in high school doesn't know what the board goals are. Maybe that's on me. I should have that conversation. So I think it's important to understand your voice and what you think about the goals as they are, and not just maybe they're the wrong goals. Maybe it's steps included in those. Maybe there's things we're not thinking about. And so for me, that student voice is more of a conversation back and forth, where I think we can get the most done.
One big goal for the district is a sense of belonging across the district and in all of our schools. And I think that student voice is most critical here, because how do we know if you have a sense of belonging or not unless you tell us and we listen? And so I think that that's a really critical piece. I think sometimes adults make assumptions about what is going to make you feel welcome, or what is going to make you feel like you belong, or make you feel comfortable and safe, and all of those other things that you guys have talked about. And I don't think that adults should be speaking for you. I think you're at an age now where you know darn well what you feel and what you need. And so first and foremost, as we talk about, kind of moving up the chain of command, the first place to go with that is to your principal. But if there seem to be things that are happening within the district, if there are sort of district expectations, or a lack of district support on something, and so you're getting from the principal, well, I don't know, then maybe that's the point where you talk to Ms. Pena, or you write to us, or you come and you speak at public comment to have your voices heard, so that people don't try to speak for you.
So I'm really excited that you all were here for the presentation that occurred before you came up to speak to us, because I am curious about your perspectives and thoughts about some of the ballot initiatives. We sit here on the board and are able to have a discussion amongst the five of us about what we feel about some of these initiatives. But I recall last year having conversations with some of the JSLB about things that were really important to them, and that the board took those up as things that became really important to us. The other thing that I want to put out here is that I think we are all excited that you're on the JSLB, and we know there are other student leaders in your schools, right? You are one student and you are not a monolith, none of you. So I want you to be looking at the other student leaders in your buildings, the ones who are in the same grade, the ones who are younger than you, the ones who are in a school that you used to go to, and be pointing out to them their leadership qualities, lifting them up, seeing where they're shining, and naming it, because you as student leaders have those skills, but also I think the relationships to help build a legacy of leaders. And in Jeffco, we say we're a community of leaders building leaders. And I think that student voice, I don't know if it's happened for you, but when another student comes to you and says, hey, what you just said or what you just did really had an impact on me, right? That hits so much harder than an adult or a board member who has less of a relationship or connection with you, right? You have so much agency and power in lifting up your other student leaders who are around you in your school buildings or when you're doing student collaboration. I really hope that you'll lean into lifting up the other leaders around you. Yeah.
I really want to echo that. When you were here last time, those of you that were, I've always wondered how we could translate all of this into our middle schools and our elementary schools. And, you know, we have our student leaders and councils in those places, but I would love it actually if you helped to lift and elevate the voices of those little ones also as you come to speak with us. And you mentioned listening really to your peers. And I think that was really great to hear how you synthesized all that and brought it back and brought voice to that. The other thing I wanted to say, and this one is kind of hard too, but like, I think it's really important when we're asking for your voice that you have a feeling that this is an authentic process, that we're not just listening to your voices and we've already, made decisions and we're just educating you on what we've already decided and then asking you what you think about what we decided. I think that really important engagement with our community or our students is that you believe that we haven't always made decisions before we hear your voice. So I think we have a role and an accountability also in the way that we hear your voice.
Thank you for talking about the communication and how important it is and uplifting student voices and collaboration and elevating each other. An authentic purpose. I really appreciate that. But our last question is for you. Do you have any questions for us?
I'll start. I have a question. What are you able to do at your schools to bring your learning from this environment, from your meetings with us and other gatherings that you've had together? How do you bring it to your school and let your peers know what you're doing?
Can I go? Okay, sorry. I was just thinking about this while you guys were answering that question about uplifting student voice, and I was like, when I say I'm on JSLB, people don't really know what that is at my school. Like, how can I better, encapsulate the voices of my relatively small school to present to you guys so that I know that I'm properly illustrating JCOS. And I was thinking, we've got student voices type things, and I think it could be really interesting to have, call it cohorts maybe, of students that sign up or show interest and come to us and they say, hey, ISIS, here's a list of things that are a concern of mine. And then I can kind of shorten those, condense those, and we could have this consistent dialogue that you guys continue to talk about because it really is valuable to have that. So I think it would be interesting if it went sort of, the board, bunch of other people, JSLB, and then people from our schools giving us input on what to say because, in any sort of situation, political situation, you have to vote in the interest of who you're representing, not in your self-interest. So my interest is not necessarily the interest of JCOS, and I really want to illustrate that. And I think that would be the best way to sort of open up that dialogue. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so you guys have all mentioned like student-to-student collaboration and the fact that we, as Jefferson County Public Schools students, we have a interesting scenario where we have that kind of opportunity to talk to students and know what they're feeling like we know kind of like the Gen Z kind of stuff, and we know what our peers want, and then that's such an important thing to talk to you about. And so in my school student government, we always talk about, it's like the 7 or 8 ways to get information out, and obviously this is like for homecoming stuff and whatever. But I also think about the fact that there's so many different little things that will hit niche groups of students through like whether that be social media or whether that be like all these different little things. And so I think that's such an important thing that we all need to keep in mind, that one thing might not be the only way to get the word out about something. So yeah.
Also, going and answering this question, I think what makes our board specifically super special is the fact that this isn't the only extracurricular or thing that we're involved in. We have kids that are in sports, we have kids that are in band. So by being able to, in a way, we are students that represent our school because we are part of many different parts of our school. And from there, we can connect to other students who believe in that. So issues that kids may have in sports may not be the same issues that kids may have in student government. So I believe that the fact that we are so involved allows us to take that in and bring that to you guys.
I appreciate all those answers, and I want to build upon what President Parker was saying, because I'm really curious about the school-to-school collaboration, because I actually think that is a truly powerful opportunity and can build on the idea of like what's offered at different schools and how do we take advantage of all of the amazing things that we offer across the district. Something that has struck me from the seat is how big our district is. Just huge, right? Tens of thousands of kids from all age groups. I mean, what you represent is a massive group of children and students and young adults. And so when you think about school-to-school collaboration, I know the conference was step one, but could those cohorts be cross-functional cohorts? Could you have a sister school? Could you, what are the ideas that could encourage those cohorts to even maybe, and some of the sports might do that, right? I mean, I think you have a tremendous amount of opportunity, and I'm really curious as to how you see maybe tackling that.
In lots of schools, they do mentorship with upperclassmen and lowerclassmen, and I really like that idea, but we can do that within schools. I like the sister schools. I think that's really important. Or we also, in the past, I know there was summits, but I've talked with other students at our JSLB meetings, and they talked about it doesn't have to be just being talked at. It's a way that we communicate and work together. It could be, for a silly little example, it can be when we all go to the library or something like that. It could just be a small little thing, but it's just trying to make it everyone to know.
Sorry, you want to make sure that people feel connected. So it doesn't even have to be, once again, being talked to. It could be interacting, like a field day. Let's see what school is maybe the better school. Or it could be collaboration. What are some things that both of your schools like?
Could work together on.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Quick thing. So obviously, the sports is such a big thing. Golden and Wheat Ridge have their own rivalry and whatnot, and Golden Green Mountain. It's this whole thing, and so and that creates a feeling of I have to support my school. I have to do all of this for my school and my school and my school. But we need to realize that we kind of all have the same common goal around sports, and then also some opening up your own schools, things that are going on, events at your school to other schools. I know this isn't in our district, but Castleview down in Castle Rock, their homecoming was last week, and we had a couple of student government students go down to their they had this festival or fair or something pep rally, and a couple of Golden students went to that and got ideas for what we could use for our homecoming, and that was just such a cool opportunity. And so I think making school events open to not only the public, the community, but also to students from other schools, and not having that rivalry is such a big thing.
And to continue about school collaboration, I go to Evergreen High School, so we are more of the mountain school, and then really the only school we actually do communicate or collaborate the most is Conifer, just because it's 10 minutes away. So, and the only way that we do communicate, through that communication, it is only really seen as a rivalry and kind of is just an against thing. So I do believe that we need to try and build a community that judges based on like character rather than like the predicates of where people come from. And I feel like that totally transcends into like adult life, and that fact of you don't want to be judging where people are coming from. So I think we need to build that within our schools.
Sorry. I just wanted to add a quick point on the school-to-school thing. I go to a K through 12 school, and so it makes me think of the fact that there's this huge age gap between schools, and so we have what are called family groups. They kind of fell off a little during COVID, but we're trying to reinstill them, and so it's 3 advising rooms, which are sort of like our home rooms, pushed together. Mine is high school, which is all 1 grade, I guess. It's a weird school. High school, 5th grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten. And so there's this collaboration that's sort of intentionally fostered there. I think neighboring schools could have, like, rather than rivalry, camaraderie, like, oh, we're, enemies, but it's not deeper than a football game. And I also think of a really good opportunity to do school-to-school collaboration is community service, especially in terms of homelessness, in terms of the Winter Wear Initiative was a great example of that. It is so much more powerful to have 22 schools working towards a common thing of feeding homeless people, providing aid than 1 school. It is so much more powerful, and it puts us as a district in a position where we stand for something collaboratively, and we as a whole, as the Jeffco Public Schools District, stand for something really powerful. And I think, more hands, the better. So, yeah.
I would really lean into that. I think common goal and common purpose can bring a lot of people together, and especially when you can do it to benefit the whole community.
I would like to add on about that. I think the best example in Jeffco is Warren Tech and how we all, from all different schools. Last year, I was fortunate to be part of the criminal justice program, and it was schools from all over. And I now have this friendship from people from places I probably wouldn't have gone. Let's say Conifer. Now I have friends over there, but it's this way that we can have communication and work together. As we said, the common goal, having that common goal, community service, and way we're working together.
Okay, so my question is how we can engage you guys more in what we're doing every single month, with the appreciation that you guys do have a lot on your plates and that you do have all the extracurriculars. And I know that, homework can be a huge thing. And especially as you hit that junior and senior year, there's a lot. And so I do appreciate that. At the same time, if there is a way that you guys could even take turns and you wouldn't have to come all the way to the Ed Center, you could watch a meeting stream, so that you could go back and say, the board is talking about this, and this is a thing that really matters to us, and we want them to hear from us about what we think about it, especially before we make decisions. So, if you can take a look at the agenda ahead of time and say, that agenda doesn't look super exciting to us, so I don't think we'll have anybody bother with that one. But you might look at some and go, no, this is really important to us. So that if one of you can watch the study session and then get back to us, even with half-sentence bullet points of, here's kind of what we're thinking about this thing that you're talking about that really matters to us. If that's something that you might be interested in, that you might be able to work out.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm not going to interrupt Tara. But I believe that what we do for like these there's like 22 of us in the internship, and there's not 22 people here. So like what we usually do is that, other than like our regular like meeting times where it's like, yeah, please come, it's like once a month, so I'm sure you can move around your schedule to make it. What we do is we like throw it up in our group chat and say if anyone would like love to join, and we usually have more than 3 people every single time who would love to volunteer to do that. So I feel like the best way to get us more involved would be to like talk to Tara or one of our sponsors, and then we can just put that in the chat, and I'm sure more people would love to do that.
Yeah, we can make certain that we are able to, oops, sorry, Tom, did I catch you? That we are previewing upcoming board agendas and kind of determine when, and if, said meeting coming up would be valuable for students to engage, but also valuable for them to give you feedback. And so we can look at some future agendas and explore what that might look like and see if we can't take a small bite at the apple and give that a go. And appreciate you understanding their commitments. And they are very, very interested in learning about board governance. So I think it would be a great learning experience for them. They'd get paid to come to a board meeting, so which is awesome. And I think it'd be a great experience for all. So wait.
I know. I get my paycheck and I'm like, oh, dang. Yeah, really quickly. Like, obviously, JSLB, we have such a cool opportunity to be able to like text a little, like, well, let's come to the board meeting, But I think it's obviously we are the voices for our schools and our communities, but I think that we can't always put forward like everything that our school wants to say or everything that's going on in our community. And so obviously you guys make an effort to get Board of Education meetings like out there and be like, come to this, but every school in the district, I'm assuming, has like announcements or like has a social media or has like all these things that we can make sure that like Board of Education meetings and other things that are going on in the district are more known. And so like making sure that not only JSLB knows what's going on, but like you guys all represent different parts of the district. And so ensuring that the people in those schools and in those communities know what's going on and know that they have access to come to these meetings.
Can I add on to that? So me and my principal have just started this thing a few months ago. We brought up a diverse group of students from our school, from my school specifically. Man, English is hard after a long day. So that way we are able to amplify a student voice. And I feel like one of the greatest ways for you guys to understand what students want and what you guys want to hear from students is having the possibility of like, hey, this is what I think, this is what's important to our students, and this would be a opportunity for students to attend this board meeting. Personally, like reach out to Tara so that way she can reach out to us, and so that way I'm able to find a way to communicate with my principal, be like, hey, okay, here's what this agenda says this week. Here are some of the key points that they brought up that they think student voice should be a part of. Let's get a small sample size of students together and truly have the discussion like, hey, what do we actually think about this? And so that way we can attend these meetings and do public hearings, like actually express what the student's perspective is. And so that way you guys have a greater understanding. This is what students are saying. Do our values and their values align? And if not, how can we come up with a compromise?
Go ahead. Sorry, I think that it's all about marketing. It's all about how you do it, how you get the word out to other people, because it's really hard to find where to get things from if you want to know about something. Like, I personally think that it should be going through the flow, like put on a page or something and put through all of our schools. If there's a meeting that you guys want students to attend to hear more student voices, because I'm pretty sure that's what you guys are trying to get across. I just think maybe like put up a poster. I don't know. Like start off small, work your way up.
I'm gonna read real quick. Last year during the board, my principal sent me an email that said that my name was featured from the board email, and it was like, ISIS seeks to create a bridge between the board and the student leadership, whatever, and I was so geeked about it. And I've had this idea of this bridge between the board and JSLB and our schools since then. And I think that we could be onto something with this cohorts thing and this sister schools thing, if maybe once a quarter, even if that much worked. once a quarter we got together with our sister schools. Maybe it's 2 or 3 schools in our area. And we talked about what we've noticed, what changes we've noticed to culture, to education, to curriculum, and what we want the board to know about that. And then we presented that to you maybe every couple of meetings, and we sort of gave you like a temperature gauge of how students are feeling. And it could be this continuous dialogue rather than like, this is what's going to happen with your education and with your life and with your building of your future. I just think that that dialogue could look like an argument, a respectful one, of course. That dialogue could look like, wow, that was a really great thing that you guys initiated. But just sort of, it wouldn't have to be like every week, every month, but it could just be this check-in of like, this is where we are as a group or a cohort of schools, and this is where you are as the board, and how can we represent our student voice as much as possible in the decisions we make district-wide. And I think that would be cool.
I have one more comment to say. I think that we're talking about the best way to get engagement for students is advertising, hosting at schools, or visiting schools. Being within the students and talking one-on-one is very important. Adding a little bit on to the sister schools, it can be not high schools, but we go to middle schools and elementary schools. And also one more thing is reaching out, like giving posters or papers out to principals, and it's 2 months. And so then you have the meeting dates. So then we can start giving them out to other schools and students so they know.
I want to just jump in here now. I could go on forever on this one. I wish we had more time. This is wonderful. You have some really great ideas, and I look forward to implementing them. I hope someone's working on those posters right now. We talk about it. And so thank you so much for what you're doing. And I love your enthusiasm. I mean, it's just so powerful. And thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, as always, for your support and your leadership. And we have a lot of important work to do. So we're really excited, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
I wrote it down. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, for our next topic of the evening, we'll receive a brief presentation on the district's Unified Improvement Plan and Unified Improvement Plans for the 8 schools in Jeffco that receive School Performance Framework ratings of Priority Improvement or Turnaround. I want to acknowledge and thank the District Accountability Committee, specifically the District Unified Improvement Plan, or DUIP, Subcommittee for its work toward developing the 2024-2025 District Unified Improvement Plan. DAC DUIP Subcommittee Chair Kaylee Weiss joins us tonight to answer questions and engage in discussion prior to the vote. Following tonight's vote, the district will submit the Unified Improvement Plan for the district and the individual plans for the 8 identified schools to comply with the Department of Education. The reason the board will be taking action tonight is to meet the October 15th submission deadline required by the Colorado Department of Education. Before I hand this over to Mr. Weiss, Superintendent Dorland, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I want to first thank Kaylee for being here tonight. And I also want to thank her for the leadership role that she has on our DAC, alongside her colleagues and fellow parents and community members. I also just want to thank this subcommittee from our DAC, who does a lot of work and really digs into the data transparently and supports not only Mr. Weiss and Ms. Pena and other staff members with and getting the UIP completed with Ms. Eaton and her team, but also the work that's been done over the last 2 years in terms of alignment of our UIP to our strategic plan, as well as our DUIP to our school level plans. Great work that Mr. Weiss has been leading to just make sure that schools have flexibility to do what they need to do with their teachers based on their student needs and the families they serve. But there's also some level of through line and consistency and coherence so that we know students are getting an equitable experience across schools in Jeffco. So thank you all for the work that you've done around all of that. It's incredible work. It's very aligned. I think the most aligned I've ever seen a school district be. And at the same time, I think respects and honors individual school needs in ways that are also necessary. So thank you all. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Superintendent Dorland and board. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Weiss right away. Weiss, Weiss, and Eaton, the law firm of the DUIP up here. So yeah. And she's not paid to be here, just to be clear. So.
And my kids are over there. I'm sorry.
All four of them.
No, don't apologize.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
So we'll hand it over to her first, and you got to push the button on that to speak. Yep.
I feel like it should bend. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Kaylee Weiss. I am a parent of Jeffco students. I have one at Mandalay, and I have 3 at Little. I am, as was said, I am one of the parent co-chairs for the DUIP subcommittee this year. I also serve alongside Austin Long. So I wanted to first share that we had our first subcommittee meeting in September, and as you can see on this slide, we had great engagement that we don't, I can say last year, we did not see this. So we're excited to hopefully keep these people engaged and keep them interested in the DUIP and all the potential that it has to bring change to our schools. And then I did want to say, kind of on a personal note for myself as well, this is my only second year on DAC. And so I am still trying to figure out all of this. And I think I volunteered to be a co-chair for this subcommittee because I see this as an amazing opportunity to show families how they can advocate personally for what the changes they'd like to see in the district. And I think I had taken the DUIP to Little last year after we received it, and parents were like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. Why would I be looking at this? What impact could I have? And that really inspired me to not only try to become a co-chair, but also have more conversations in schools, in SAC meetings, in PTSA meetings, just in general, standing outside waiting to pick up our kid, conversations about what impact we can have as parents in the district, not only for our kids, but all children. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is the DUIP timeline. There's 2 pieces that I feel are really important to mention within this timeline. So the first is that the DAC sees different pieces of the DUIP throughout the year. It's not just, as you can see here, it's not just we see it once. And I think that is part of what is so important. As the DAC has a lot of turnaround, it's really important to be discussing different pieces and making sure that there is a cohesive understanding of the DUIP, because it is also the DUIP and the UIP, and how does that affect every school and how does that affect families? And so I think it's an amazing opportunity for us to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And then the second is that the DAC met in May of the previous school year to preliminarily approve the DUIP. This was done, as I'm sure everyone here knows, because the beginning of the school year just does not allow for enough time for the DUIP to be approved. However, I will say we did meet at our last DAC meeting in September and have a discussion about the DUIP and have conversations about what it looks like to have a UIP that is already being submitted right after this conversation. I believe it was the next week that it had to be submitted to community superintendents. And so we had a lot of conversations about what that looks like. A lot of questions from DAC members about what does, oh my gosh, my brain. What does the UIP directly lead to the DUIP? And is there a direct ability for us to be saying, okay, so we did not reach one of these goals. What's that accountability? And so a lot of questions as we've been reviewing some of the content that we gathered about what is the future of the DUIP and how can we engage more families and see more goals that are met with families at the table. So that is what I have. Go ahead.
So this slide shows the district performance framework. The Colorado Department of Education provides a
district performance framework for every district in the state of Colorado. This is Jeffco's for this year. You can see that we continue to be accredited by the state of Colorado, by the Colorado Department of Education, and that we showed some slight improvement from the last year's framework.
So the DUIP is something that every district is required to do. It's a part of statute. The Colorado Department of Education tracks the district unified improvement plan as well as the school improvement plans. And so every school is required to create a unified improvement plan, and then we have the district unified improvement plan. One of the things that's really important to us is that this plan is created with purpose. It's not a compliance exercise. We really want it to be something that guides the professional learning in our district, the data that we're looking at, the interventions that we're providing, the curriculum we're choosing. We really believe all of those things kind of center in the DUIP. And so there's opportunity for us to create a tool that leads to better outcomes for our students through really strong alignment to our strategic plan, as well as the work that's happening in our schools every day. So when this slide here really just helps to remind us that it's your waypoint. Like, this is what we're working toward. The DUIP is definitely an ongoing tool, something that we work on, change, and adjust throughout the year. And as you heard from Kaylee, we talked to the DAC over the course of the year about where we're at with the DUIP and looking into the next year. And so in May, when the DAC preliminarily approved the DUIP, that's because we need to plan for the summer learning that we're going to do with our leaders to ensure that they're ready to lead their staff when they return in August. As I said, it's an ongoing process. We continuously, as you know, after listening to Monitoring Report 1.1 a few weeks ago, we're constantly analyzing the data in our system. It's telling us about how we're doing, whether or not the practices that we're implementing are having a large or a small impact. And we use that data to help us identify what our priority performance challenges are. And so you'll see some of those in the next few slides. But once we identify the priority performance challenges, we then have to create a plan on how we're going to improve based on those challenges. And so the plan itself is very detailed, and if you've had a chance to read it, which I think most of you probably have, it's hefty. It's a relatively long plan. There's a lot of detail in there. So our slide deck doesn't necessarily represent fully what's in the plan, but it does detail and quite extensively the work that we're doing as a district. We do create 1 and 2 year targets, and so it's important to know that we have targets 1 and 2 years. And then some of the data we'll talk about tonight, you're actually looking at data that's from last year as well as pre-pandemic data. And then our job is to implement that improvement plan. And so that's the work that we're doing right now. Some of you were at the leadership launch. You saw some of this in action as we were leading our principals in July and preparing them to lead their staffs in August. And as we are going out right now, for example, the superintendent, myself, deputy superintendent, and several other members of the cabinet are continuously visiting schools. And so every week we're in a different school and we're walking through classrooms and we're talking about whether or not the work that we're doing in this plan is actually taking hold. Is it having an impact on how teachers are engaging in their practice, and whether or not it's having an impact on student outcomes. So we're monitoring it. Not only are we implementing it, but we're monitoring it constantly. There's really strong alignment, as the superintendent said, to the Jeffco Thrives strategic plan. We have a couple of really key areas that you guys have been around enough to know that we've been talking about this for a few years now. So early literacy, 3rd grade reading is an area that we're heavily focused in, 5th and 8th grade math. And then when we talk about post-secondary workforce readiness, there are 3 areas we're working on in high school concurrently with High School Reimagined work. 9th graders on track to graduate, 12th graders on time graduation, and then concurrent enrollment opportunities for students. And then we also have just some larger level connections, the Instructional Excellence Initiative around lesson internalization and data literacy. You've heard about the data dashboard and the work that we're doing in the district to familiarize our staff, our leaders in particular right now, with the data dashboard, how to use it, how to inform their work with it, and then a culture of safety and belonging. And so the last thing I want to highlight here is I've been in education for 24 years now, and districts have been creating DUIPs for most of that time. And there hasn't always been alignment between what the district is working on and what the schools are working on. And really, if we want to make some of these goals come to reality, the best way for us to do that is to have our schools working on exactly what we're working on. And so my team and I have worked very closely with principals this year, along with Dr. Eaton's team, who has provided a ton of support to our leaders. She's held office hours, and they've been really well attended. 90 to 100 principals coming to visit these, and they're anchoring their school unified improvement plans in the DUIP. And so some of the major improvement strategies that you're going to see tonight, you will see in school UIPs. And again, if our goal is to meet third grade literacy, we're all working on the same thing. That's our best opportunity to make those goals become a reality. And I'm really proud of our leaders. I want to lift up our principals who have embraced this idea that we should be aligned. And I also want to thank the ALTs in our schools who they're the ones that have to make the UIP at the school level become a reality. Right? It's not just the principal that does that work. It's the coach, it's the assistant principal, it's the members of the academic leadership team. And so, and as we are going through buildings, I've been in 13 buildings as of today, and walked through classrooms, almost 100 classrooms. I am seeing the work that we have outlined in this plan in our classrooms. We're watching teachers focus on lesson internalization. We are hearing leaders talk about data. We're seeing really intentional practices around academic monitoring. And so, and I hope that you're seeing that too when you're out in buildings. Because it really is impressive. As Tracy said, the alignment right now, I've not seen anything like it. And I don't think it's just because I'm sitting in this chair. I really believe like it's happening out there. And I want to thank our staff for doing that. A couple of bright spots from our data last year, and you'll notice we highlighted the source here. You did hear monitoring report 1.1 last month, and so some of the data we're just pulling right out of there, but you heard a lot of this already, so we didn't go into a lot of detail. We have a couple really nice bright spots. One, 3-point gain in reading achievement in 2024, which is up 3 points from last year. It's actually up 5 points from pre-pandemic data, which is a pretty big jump. And that's actually really great data for us around third grade reading. 5th and 8th grade math, we met or exceeded up 1 to 3 points, 1 point in 5th, 3 points in 8th. And then we saw strong CMAS and PSAT academic growth across grades 4, 5, 10, and 11. And we also saw some really nice improvements in secondary mathematics, including in 8th grade CMAS math at the 56th percentile, which is a really great data point. I think it also reinforces that the resource that we've implemented in our secondary schools around math has been supporting really great growth. And then some other bright spots. This is out of the Panorama survey. 74% of students report that their math work is challenging. This is actually a huge jump. I can't remember the exact number of what it came up from, but our Panorama data is telling us that our students are finding more challenging math, which is something that we believe is really important in terms of improving our math outcomes for students. And then about 6 in 10 of our incoming seniors have already met graduation demonstrations in reading and math. That's really great news for us because over 60% of our students demonstrated graduation requirements before they even got to their senior year. And then in reading and math specifically. And then the number of students earning industry certifications has increased dramatically by almost 500 certifications. This is actually a part of my monitoring report later today too. So you might see this piece of data again, but this is a really huge jump for us, and it also speaks to the work that we're doing around High School Reimagine, the improvements in our CTE programming, the opportunities for students in concurrent enrollment, and then these industry certifications that they're getting. It's really special for our high school students. So these are our major improvement strategies that are highlighted in the DUIP and also in our school UIPs. The district and schools will monitor and strengthen the instructional core using the strategy of unit and lesson internalization. You've heard this language from Renee Nikothodis, who's our Chief Academic Officer. Her team has really supported our leaders and my team with helping to implement this across the system. We're also implementing the curricular resources in our schools, illustrative math, HMH reading, and a few others. Also, teaching at grade level. One of the takeaways that we had over the course of last year as we were in classrooms is we saw that in some classrooms we weren't rising the rigor to the grade level standard, and so we're really pushing that with our educators this year. And then observation and feedback cycle. So getting out into classrooms, leaders can only implement a plan as well as they would like to if they know what's actually happening in their building in their classrooms. And so getting out into the classrooms to see what's happening. The second major improvement strategy is around the culture of data literacy. And as you all know, this has been a big focus for us as an organization. The data dashboard that Dr. Kim has led has really changed the game in terms of the ability to access and view data that's really supportive of both leaders and educators making strong decisions about intervention for their students and acceleration. And then we have embedded data camps. And so we did a data camp in, I guess it was June, was it May? It was May, June, end of May, beginning of June for all principals. And now we're running a data camp. We've run a data camp now every Monday for the last 5 Mondays, and we've been bringing in assistant principals and instructional coaches. And so they're all getting access to the data dashboard. They're using it in their work, and those data camps have been really useful and supportive. It's also leading to the data dashboard that's going to get in the hands of teachers very soon. And then our last one is around the culture of safety and belonging, and we're really focusing on asset-based approaches, and not just in teaching and learning, but also in discipline. And so we'll talk about discipline data at some point this year with you all. And one of the ways that we're working on this culture of safety and belonging is through an asset-based approach to discipline. We're also providing a lot of training around student engagement, family engagement, and then, as you all know, we've invested quite a bit in social emotional learning as a district, both with social emotional learning specialists, but also the curriculum resources that they can use in their buildings. And then, of course, with Tara's team, we're working really diligently on family partnership and support structures.
So Mr. Weiss mentioned that we have targets that are required in the UIPs. One thing that we do is we look at last year's targets and we see how we did. So this is a summary of, we met many of the targets, we approached many of them, and some we did not meet. I will highlight that for PSAT, SAT, the transition to the digital test really changed the trending, and we could have just as easily put in there not applicable because the trending is not so accurate. So that one is could have had an asterisk on that one. But the full list of the targets that we met and did not meet are listed at the link in the bottom. And then we move into this year's plan. So as Mr. Weiss said, we have 1 and 2 year targets. These are some examples of our 1 year target. You can see that many of our achievement indicators are in the 1 year is 2 to 3 point gain, but in the 2 year, it's up to a 5 point gain. So the expectation is we will see that 5 point gain over 2 years in the targets. And a full list of those targets, again, is listed in the DUIP document in board docs. Okay, and our last slide is to inform you of the schools that are in priority improvement or turnaround. We actually talked to you a couple of years ago about the work of the turnaround team, which is now called the transformation team in the district. Each of these schools is either in priority improvement or turnaround. There are a couple that are decreased due to participation. For example, Jefferson Junior Senior was decreased due to participation. Lumberg and Rosestein are now in turnaround. The others are all in priority improvement. JRLP is a celebration as they move from priority improvement to improvement, which means they're now off the state clock. These schools, the ones that are shaded, we are actually going through a process called request to reconsider. There are some aspects of their data that we believe maybe demonstrate that their performance isn't quite as concerning as maybe identified by the state. And so that we'll be able to get back to the board after we hear back from CDE regarding the request to reconsider on those 3 schools. But these schools are heavily supported by our transformation team, which is a director and a coach who go out, support these schools, support them with their unified improvement plan. They support them with their active monitoring of what's happening in their school regularly and with data. And then several of these schools are also supported by TNTP. As you know, we're working closely with TNTP on a few things. And some of these schools are also working with TNTP to support their work. So between the community superintendent, the transformation team, TNTP, and other resources in the district, we really are working closely with these schools to support them coming out of priority improvement or turnaround. All right, questions?
Board members, questions? I'm going to start with one. Since there's so much emphasis all the time on CMAS scores and achievement scores and all that stuff, what would you say is one of the main reasons why the schools we've identified, our 8 schools, didn't get to the performance rating? Is it just the scores, or are there other common reasons for not getting there?
So for elementary and middle schools, the school performance framework is it's entirely based on CMAS. So it would be a state test that is driving that performance, and it doesn't consider other indicators. For high school, there are other indicators such as graduation, some post-work secondary work readiness indicators, but for elementary, it's all about the state test.
Because I was struck by the DUIPs are so comprehensive, and especially when you talk about belonging and the student experience and all those things, those are so important, and our district has put a priority on them, but they don't, they're not reflected in the SPF, so it's disappointing.
I will say that the Colorado Department of Education has undertaken a couple of year process where they're trying to reflect on what the accreditation should look like, and they have been taking feedback from stakeholders, and they have a committee representing districts and community stakeholders. So they are trying to be reflective and understand that this is fairly limited, and we are hopeful that they might be able to, in a couple of years, it's going to take a while, actually change the format to include some of those other metrics that are so important to our students being successful.
And I would add that I think that whether the state counts the work that we're doing around a culture of safety and belonging towards the DUIP or the SPF shouldn't necessarily drive whether or not we do that work. I think it's really critical work. And frankly, I think kids will perform better when the culture is strong, like when there's a place for them to belong and they feel safe. I think we all, I mean, I'm not just making that up, right? There's a lot of research that backs that up. It's definitely something that we prioritize and we care about in Jeffco. And so we will continue to work on those things regardless of the state measuring it.
Before I get to Director Reed, I just want to say that on one of my school visits I guess it was just Monday, I was excited. I saw a lesson in an elementary school. It was a ELA lesson, reading a passage, and I got to see 3 different teachers working with 3 different groups. And so there was the first one I was looking at were the high achieving readers who were doing it for critical thinking. And so the approach, was assuming that they already had the comprehension there, and how could they go beyond what the sentence said or what the paragraph said. And it was exciting to listen to their conversations. And then I went to see it being taught to the on-grade level, where they were working with vocabulary. What does the word gangplank mean? What do you think it would mean? And then they would show pictures of it. And then I saw a smaller group, just a couple of students, who were really trying to decode the words. They didn't even know what the words were yet to be able to figure out, if they knew the vocabulary. And I thought it was amazing, because all 3 teachers were teaching the same topic, the same lesson, if you will, but at the appropriate level for the students. And so I think good on it.
Academic belonging is a part of belonging. Yeah.
A couple of things with what you just said, and I always want to be cautious and say, I believe every kid can learn. I genuinely believe that. And I think that every kid should be doing grade level work. However, that might be modified for their needs. And I think that's great. It is no coincidence that this cluster of schools has high free and reduced lunch, high numbers of students for whom English is not their first language. And so when we say, why aren't they doing better? Because our kids don't all start in the same place, and our schools don't all start in the same place. And so, we should absolutely aspire, and we should absolutely stretch and absolutely build scaffolding so that these kids can achieve. But I also think, it's very easy for schools to be like, you ask us why we are here, and we are doing our best. I was just in Lombard, and they are amazing. Those kids are amazing. What they're doing there is amazing. With the kids learning in 2 different languages, I couldn't do that. I am amazed at that. And so I do want to point that out. It matters. We like to sometimes pretend that it doesn't, but it absolutely does. And it does affect how we dispense resources, which is great. We look at that and we say, hey, you've got challenges other people don't have. We're going to give you resources. And I think those resources are helping, but they're not a magic cure-all. and they're not a magic wand, and we don't have a magic wand, but we're going to just keep working at it. The other thing I do want to say, as you guys have talked about how aligned the district is, and I've been to, I don't even know how many schools I've been to at this point, because I'm trying to get in like 4 or 5 every Friday. So I'm packing them in there. And what I am hearing consistently from leadership is that they have such a clear sense of direction from the district. And what I've heard over and over is that it is more clear than it has ever been in their careers. And they feel like they know what they're supposed to be doing, and therefore they know what they're supposed to communicate to their teachers. In the meantime, I've had a chance to talk to some teachers who are also saying, I feel like I know what we're doing. And I feel like what we're doing is relevant and right. One of the teachers that I talked to, is my favorite thing that somebody said to me was, I can teach with my door open, because before they were always telling me to do stupid things I wasn't going to do. So I closed my door. And now what I'm doing makes sense. So I teach with my door open because I want my principal to come in and see what's going on. And I think that is just dynamite. So I just want to give you that feedback.
I want to lift up how grateful I'm hearing, and also doing a lot of school visits, that data accessibility has been for schools to pinpoint what it is that they want to focus on. We had this conversation yesterday at a high school that we were visiting, and I also just want to lift up attendance, right, as a major improvement piece for a lot of our schools, and that we're seeing some pretty interesting turnaround numbers too in our attendance, because there's a focused effort to lean into that. And I think we're doing those things because we have the data available, and we're identifying per school what it is that they really want to improve on and work on, and what's going to have a huge impact on student outcomes. And the other thing I wanted to just bring up here around DUIP and mentioning CTE work that we're doing with Reimagining High School is how many of our students who are going through CTE programs have already launched into careers and jobs before they graduate from high school. And that's a success story that I also hope that we can tell now and also into the future as we continue to expand our CTE work.
What did you? I had a quick question. I think there's been some amazing comments, and I just want to say thank you for all the work, because I know this is a lot of work, and I agree with Director Reed. Every kid can learn. Every child has great potential, and so I appreciate this hard work. When we're thinking about the culture of safety and belonging, and we talk about something that is an asset-based approach, can you explain to me what that means?
Sure, if I can get the microphone turned on. Yeah, I think really it's restorative practices is a really good example where, historically discipline has been met with consequence, often exclusionary, putting kids out of school. And so taking the approach that, discipline is a communication of something, behavior is a communication of something. And so really trying to take the time to understand what a student's trying to communicate with their behavior, and then also helping them, we're a learning organization. And so helping our students learn from their mistakes versus taking the approach of, automatically you're out of here. And to be clear, we still suspend students if we need to, and we still, go through processes that are exclusionary at times. But the goal is to really focus on what are the students' assets. And so we have some students who, through these processes, we've learned more about them and what they need out of school. That allows them to then get the intervention they maybe need from, whether it's a mental health support person in the building, or a teacher they really just connect to who can help them make better decisions. But the idea being that we really want to help all of our students learn from the mistakes that they make. And we're also working with our teachers to just assume positive as you're working with students, right? There are a lot of things going on in students' lives, just like there are in everyone else's lives. And so before jumping to or reacting to something without putting so much thought into it, what else do we know about the student that can help us maybe support or manage them so that they can do better in school.
We're using our data to support that effort.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep.
I want to add, because I agree with Dave, working with positive assumptions about students, especially when they may not be showing up as their best self on every day, which we all have, right? Those moments is really an important part of this belonging piece. The other thing I want to share is, we have from our student data in the Panorama survey last year, in the 6th through 12th grade category, they split it elementary and secondary, 24% of our students had a positive response in the category of school engagement. 35% of our secondary students had a positive response in the category of school belonging. I have been going in my school visits and hosting student-led conversations. So this JSLB conversation that you just had is as much about belonging as it is when we typically think about historically marginalized students and how we pull them in and help them feel like they belong. It's broader than that for me, given this data that I just shared, given the conversations that I've had with the JSLB group, and given the conversations that I have with students in my school visits. One of the things that the outlier report from TNTP that looked nationally at schools that are beating the odds on closing the achievement gaps and raising all kids' achievement levels is that it's about belonging, not just to the community and the culture of the school, but it's about kids seeing themselves in their academic learning as well. In the extracurricular activities, you're going to see this next monitoring report about that as well. Having intention in what they're showing up every day to do in their classrooms. The conversations I've had with kids in schools this year, I start off by saying, when I come and visit a school, I often ask kids, what do you like about this school? And students tell me, I like recess, I like lunch, I like my friends, my teachers are really nice. And I just tell them up front, I know all those things are great about this school for the most part. I want to talk about you and your experience in your classroom and your learning, because that's what we're here to do. And our mission is to help you achieve your biggest dream. And you're only going to be able to do that when you walk across that graduation stage and have the skill set you need to live your biggest dream with your next phase in life. And so off the top, we start talking about their learning. And it's fascinating. Next time we have update meetings, I'll tell you more about what kids are saying to me about the great parts of their learning and what they wish might change a little bit. And so I do think as we talk about this notion of belonging and creating a culture of that in Jeffco, for me, it's as much about using discipline as an opportunity for learning, making sure kids who are struggling are called in to being successful, as Dave was talking about, so important. But for me, it's also about every single adult in this organization taking seriously the learning of our students and believing that every single one of them can find relevance in what they do on a daily basis with their assignments, with their assessments, with their opportunities to show what they know in differentiated ways. So it's a really important aspect of what we're trying to accomplish. You heard some of our students, I think it was Tom tonight, talk about how he and his principal have started a student voice group. That's a direct result of the work that our team is leading around belonging. And Dave's team is leading around what we're asking school leaders to do, not only to support their teachers, but also to support their students and having a voice. Because when you have voice, you have a feeling and a sense of being part of something in a really meaningful way. So I had to add that piece and just broaden it a little bit. Thank you.
Sure.
See if I can turn this thing on. I just wanted to add, I think I graduated from Arvada West, class of 2011, and I heard JSLB up here speaking, and I was wishing that that was around when I was a kid, when I was struggling in math, and they changed curriculum, and I felt like I wasn't heard, and I wasn't seen, and I actually had opportunities to meet with Cindy Stevenson, who was the superintendent at that time, and I still felt like I wasn't heard. And so I feel like for me, this piece specifically, the fact that that is on the forefront for these conversations is huge. And it really does help. I think I saw the importance of that. It's part of the reason why I'm here. I'm here for the child that I wanted to be, that was heard. I'm also here for those ones that just crashed into the wall over there, so that they can have these opportunities for engagement and feel belonging and feel like they are seen and heard by their district. So
thank you so much for sharing that, like, even as a student, you had opportunities to talk to district leadership. And I want to call out President Parker's comments about thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, but also share your thoughts with the adults who you interact with every day, because it's not just about one superintendent or one board member or the whole board hearing kids, right? That's important, really important. But it's also about every adult, right? Every principal taking this seriously, and a call to action that they too need to listen to students and hear their voice. And it doesn't also mean, and I've told the JSLB this, doesn't also always mean we're going to do what you tell us you want. That's not what engagement means. And you heard them talk tonight about a conversation. And I thought that was really thoughtful and insightful on their part. So it takes a village, right? We're all just one person, but hopefully rowing in the same direction with the same values around why we're here and what we're doing for our kids.
I just wanted to say thank you, Kaylee, for your leadership. Kaylee is also, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but works and is a leader in the early childhood system in Adams County. Here they are. And then comes to Jefferson County and does a lot of work in your school at Little and PTA, all that work, and then finds time to come and do this work with the DAC. So thank you so much for finding the time to do all of that work and coming here with your little ones so late in the day.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your work. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the 2024 District Unified Improvement Plan and the 8 individual school improvement turnaround plans as presented in board docs, and to authorize district staff to submit them to the Colorado Department of Education to meet the October 15th submission date?
I move to approve the 2024 District Unified Improvement Plan and the 8 individual school improvement turnaround plans as presented in board docs, and to authorize district staff to submit them to the Colorado Department of Education to meet the October 15th submission date.
Do I have a second? Second. Any comments? It has been moved and seconded that the board approve the 2024 District Unified Improvement Plan and the 8 individual school improvement turnaround plans as presented in board docs, and to authorize the district staff to submit them to the Colorado Department of Education. Roll call, please, Ms. Zavada.
Ms. Applegate?
Yes.
Ms. Kenworthy?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
And that motion passes. And the time now is 6:43, so let's take a 10-minute break. For our next topic this evening, the board will hear from district staff along with independent consultants from Dynamic Program Management on the district's plan to create a strategic capital master plan to inform capital planning for the next 5 to 10 years. For the board and our listening public, the last facility master plan in Jeffco Public Schools was completed in 2016 and was designed to inform the 2018 bond program. With the conclusion of the 2018 bond program, the district is preparing to procure services to assist with creating a plan for developing, managing, and utilizing district facilities to meet both current and future needs. Before I turn this over to Mr. Avedikian, is there anything you would like to add, Superintendent Dorland?
Thank you, President Parker. I want to thank Mr. Avedikian for being here and acknowledge that Mr. Gatlin is not alongside him. Mr. Gatlin was unable to make it this evening, and we're very happy he has a partner in crime, Mr. Avedikian, who can represent the work that he's leading, that they're leading together. And then I also want to just welcome Miss Riley and Miss Kaneda and thank them for their support and help as they've been working with us to really put the process together and think strategically about how do we do this work in the context of our declining enrollment, in the context of the boundary study that we have conducted and completed, and in the context of really thinking more strategically about our enrollment and the long-term needs of our district, given all of those pieces and parts. So thank you for being here. And finally, I want to acknowledge for our board and our listening public that we had at one point hoped to have been engaged in the planning of the master plan already. And if you'll recall, just to remind our board, we delayed that work because we ran, after releasing an initial RFP, we ran into the realization that many school districts across the state of Colorado right now have bond measures on this November's ballot. Because of that, there was a limited amount of support available in response to our RFP from architectural firms who typically do this kind of work with school districts. And so we were very hesitant to do something as important as our strategic capital master plan without making sure that we had a rigorous process to select the right partner. And so we informed you, I think last spring, late spring, I can't remember, that we were delaying that process a little bit. And we were also in the midst of this boundary study that was giving us a lot of information that we felt needed to be considered. So we did take a step back late last spring and into the summer and have been working with our partners. And we're excited to share with you the work that's been done to continue moving this forward at a pace where we're feeling like it's organized in the right way and ready to get us the outcome that we're looking for. I also do want to thank any board member who took time and met with our partners to discuss your interests in this process. I know several of you were able to do that. And that always helps us at the beginning of a project like this, make sure that we're going to meet the board's interests. So thank you for doing that. And with that, Mr. Avedikian.
Thank you, Superintendent Dorland, President Parker, and board directors. I'm happy to welcome Ms. Kaneda and Ms. Riley from Dynamic Program Management, our partners on the RFP process for getting our strategic capital master planning partner selected. I think you gave ample context to this work and the work that's in front of us and the rationale for holding off on it. I think the boundary study is one of the puzzle pieces that we are going to be using to put together the strategic capital master plan with the collaboration of our partners who are joining me this evening. And so then without further delay, I'll turn it over to them to walk us through a presentation that will cover kind of some of the basics on what a strategic capital master plan is and our timeline and next steps for implementation.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm Colleen Kaneda, and this is Kate Riley, and we're very happy to be here too. So I appreciate the warm welcome, and we've enjoyed our time working with Jeffco School District over the last few months with this project. Dynamic Program Management, we're an owner's rep firm, so we're not the type of group that would actually go out and do the master planning, but we can help put the guardrails on the process. We work all the time in capital improvement projects for school districts and help them just navigate wherever you are in a capital project process. So our job here is to help you find the best fit for you to do your capital master plan. As already mentioned, you have done a lot of work as a district with various studies, the boundary study being one. And then your planning team, your facilities department has a very impressive database of your facilities and deficiencies and various assessments. I think that they do every 3 years or so at every building, which is something that is, again, it's really impressive that they have all of that information. So we have that information, you have enrollment and forecasting information, and then we have the boundary study. And the hope is to pull some of that work all into one guiding document with respect to capital improvements and where is Jeffco going to go over the next months and years and even decades with this type of process. So what is a strategic capital master plan? It's a long-term and comprehensive plan for managing and developing and all of understanding your facilities needs and what is going on currently and what you need for the future. And it's really, we like to talk about these strategic capital master plans as a roadmap for the future with respect to facilities. And it will address how you use your capital reserves that already set aside in your general operating budget. And then it's also going to cross over into the question of what type of potential asks are you going to have to the community, but also for you as a board to be informed and communicate to the public if you do need to go and ask for additional bond or mill ballot questions, that the public is very much aware of it ahead of time. What is that cadence? When are they going to expect to see it? And it's all out there transparently for the public. And as we've been talking with Greg and Jeff throughout this whole process, we thought, let's also talk to the board about what a strategic capital plan, master plan is not, because when we get involved and help school districts with these master planning processes, sometimes we'll come in at the end, right before a project is actually going to start construction or start design. And we hear a lot from districts that expectations didn't align with their master planning firm and what they got as a deliverable. And a lot of times that's just because there wasn't a lot of communication about what a strategic capital plan is not. And so it's one thing is it's not like a super high level, quickly put together document that barely scratches the surface. But on the flip side, it's also not detailed construction drawings and documents and beautiful architectural renderings of future projects. So it really is a framework and a plan to execute over time for, the biggest part of these is your strategic plan for implementation of projects and how you prioritize those projects. So we just wanted to take a second to talk about what it's not, and it's not full architectural design and specifications and all of that. As we already touched on, you've done some of the components that normally would go into a strategic capital master plan, which is good news because it means that you're not paying a consultant to do work that you don't have, because you have the work on the boundary study, enrollment information, demographics, and then all of that data that your facility department has on each of your schools. So we're really bringing in this third piece of a facility master plan that kind of incorporates all of these different things that you've already worked on, and then it's kind of moving it into the next phase so that there's a very clear plan. So we'll use all of the information that you have and then move things forward from a capital perspective.
So as President Parker alluded to before, the last facility master plan conducted by the district was in 2016, and that was in preparation for the 2018 CIP. And prior to that, another internal facility master plan had been completed in 2011. Typically, these plans do go on 5 to 10 year cycles, so we are kind of right in the range of when a district would typically pursue a new plan. We've also gone through some major changes in our enrollment trends in that time, which also necessitates taking a look at our footprint in terms of how we serve students and where we serve students with our facilities. And so the goal here of doing this as a strategic capital master plan and not just an internal facility master plan is that we're also incorporating those elements of the boundary study and other work that we've done in assessing our facilities, so that we're not just looking at facility improvements for the future, but we're looking at them in the context of a broader strategy around how we're managing the enrollment changes we've experienced and also the new construction that we see at certain parts of the county.
Our task here, as I mentioned earlier, was to develop an RFQP that's going to be specific and tailored to the needs of Jeffco School District. Are there boilerplate capital planning RFQPs out there? Yes, of course. But we wanted to dig in with department heads, other key staff, and some of you here on the Board of Education to talk through what your thoughts were about what a facilities master plan could be used for and how we're going to meet the goals of the district. And from all of these interviews that we got to meet with, we were able to determine a number of common themes that we heard. Even though we heard from very diverse departments and what maybe their priorities are, we were able to pull out some pretty common themes, which was pretty neat to see how aligned staff is with where capital planning should be going. One of the top things that we talked about mostly with everybody is that the district's in a unique position because you have potential declining enrollment in certain areas in your district geographically, and then some increased growth in some pockets. And so how will that get handled? So this is something that we heard from everybody. I think everybody talked about some of that just unique challenges that the district hadn't really maybe been in the past. We talked a lot about how this plan should have short and long-term focus. So what do we need to do now? What's really critical? And then what makes sense over the long run with all of the different data that's going to come from this planning process. We heard a lot about equity in the student experience regionally and making sure that whoever the firm is that does get selected, that equity is at the forefront of their minds as they're going through this process. And really getting to know Jeffco School District and all of the various areas that you serve and all of the student populations that you serve. And accountability, we heard a lot about too, just making sure that things are being communicated and everything's transparent. And it's that the methodology is consistent across the district as well. We got a lot of discussion with a number of people about, we know it's going to cost money, so how is that going to come together? And obviously that's not for us to solve today, but we're hoping that the planning process will make it more clear for you as a board or the future boards to make sure that they understand what that funding looks like and how to prioritize what you have and what you might need to ask of the community in the future. We talked a lot about bringing Jeffco's facilities into modern day because the students are learning differently, as you all know better than I do, and what their learning environment needs to be is changing and evolving, and making sure that we're modernizing but not getting too far ahead of ourselves with any kind of planning that maybe is going to be obsolete quicker than we can even build. And then again, transparency came up. We wanted to make that as its own topic, just making sure that the community is very informed as you go through this process. And finally, one thing we heard, I think, from almost everybody is that there are a lot of stakeholders that all have different wants and needs and priorities, and how do we balance all of that? So that will be a big task of the master planner to put together, again, a methodology that is very clear and transparent on what the priorities are going to be as deficiencies get addressed and potential new construction might come online, and how do we balance all of those things? And we took all the information from those various interviews. We've had lots of discussions with staff as well, with Greg and Jeff, mostly with check-ins over the last few months about what we were hearing and what needed to be in the RFQP. So this These next couple of slides are part of that scope of work that we want to make sure is included. Understanding your building inventory, which you have, but also capacity and how full are you? How much space do you actually have? What are a space needs study of your facilities to make sure that you're utilizing them the best that you can. Number one, and that's pretty typical in a facilities master plan that you're going to get that data. That's always something people want to get. Cost saving and maintenance, that came up a bit too. Are there places where the district can save money, especially with like sustainability measures that are easy to implement, maybe with utility savings or other areas? So we talked about that a little bit, and that would be part of the scope of work for the master planner to evaluate where costs could be saved. And then, of course, budgeting, this I already touched on. What are the overall fiscal needs? How do we prioritize what projects would get funded first, or which, I should even say projects, but deficiencies of any capital needs? How do those get prioritized? And what is the urgency on those? And then how do we understand what can be accomplished with your annual capital reserve funds, and then what would maybe be a larger ask? And, maybe packaging things into different levels of investment for the community. Safety and security always comes up as a top issue, of course. I probably don't need to go into a lot of depth there, but that would be a part of the master planner's work to just make sure that there's everything across the districts up to date, and planning for those buildings to just be very equitable and making sure everything is safe and secure as possible. We also want to make sure that whatever the deliverable is, that it's consistent, because some of you are probably term limited and there will be different boards over the years, and and possibly leadership and staff, and just trying to make sure that this plan is very consistent, that it doesn't just go on a shelf because new people have come in, that it's really going to stand the test of time. It will probably over the years need updating, but just having a really great foundation on how to plan for these needs. Community engagement and communication, wanting to make sure that there's an interactive plan for that as part of this deliverable, so that when it is ready to go, that people can easily see their kid's school or their neighborhood school and what it looks like from a facility standpoint. And then equity, we've already discussed, and then modernization, we've also already discussed, but really how do facilities support operations of the future and being efficient and effective. We tried to identify some fairly easy process goals for the process itself. So improving and building upon what you've already done in the past. Identifying your priorities, and how do we come up with a framework to identify facility priorities, and knowing how schools are funded in our state, how do you prioritize where funds would go for each one of those things? We wanted to just, again, use the data that you already have, and then clearly communicate the process and outcomes to the community. I think our last slide here is our timeline. When we work with districts on these planning processes, especially in Jeffco is larger than most districts that we help, we always give the advice of don't rush this process just to get to an end goal of going to the community for asking for money, whatever it is, that really to be thoughtful and strategic and take your time, because that this document and this plan is really going to inform future generations of facilities planning for a long time. So as mentioned about a lot of the bonds on the ballot here in a few weeks, we had slowed down this process, and so we do want to issue the RFQP this month, and then we're strategically asking for responses to come back after Election Day, because a lot of the firms might be already tied to districts and projects, so we want to ask for them after Election Day, have a selection completed by the end of the calendar year, and really kick off with the planning process in after winter break in 2025. And then the plan would take approximately 18 months, potentially less, potentially more, depending on how the process goes and what information needs to be developed over that time. But we do think it'll be about 2026 when this document will be finally finalized and presented to you. And I think as far as the board, we would imagine that sometime in December or January that a contract will be brought to you for approval from a selected firm through a procurement process. And that is where we are right now. But we're open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Board, questions, comments?
Thank you. And thanks for doing the interviews. It's nice to know you now. I think I have forgotten. So the fall, winter 2026, it's to complete the plan, right? So we have a plan, and then is the, what's the next step after we have a plan? You know what I'm wondering, what exactly are we completing, and then what comes next?
Sure. So a lot of grant funds available out there for any capital projects. They do like to see that a district has at least gotten pretty far along in a master planning process. So if there are grant opportunities out there, having the master plan will help you pursue some funding through grant programs. And then I think it's really going to be up to the board's direction and Superintendent Dorland's direction on how various things might get packaged for you as far as here are our highest priorities as you're doing your budgeting processes for highest priority. If you do want to ask the community potentially for dollars, and we see packages that a board can evaluate if as they're looking at potentially putting any dollars out on the ballot.
Do you all recommend that while we're doing the plan or building the plan, we really hold off on any major decisions on any part of our capital plan?
That's a really good question. I think obviously you're probably going to have schools that have critical maintenance needs. You can't let roofs leak, you know, the warm, safe, and dry type of things. You're probably going to need to continue to spend dollars on with the amount of facilities you have. I think if this plan would help inform any large decisions that you would be making as far as how facilities would move through in the future. We recently completed this process with District 51 out in Grand Junction. They also had a concurrent school closure committee trying to determine and having some of that information inform the school closure committee on what the condition of those facilities are. That wasn't the only criteria that the school closure committee was using, but it did help inform them for those decisions.
I appreciate your call to out on equity and also the consistency of like the historical story that, I mean, I've only been here 3 years and there's a huge story before me about our buildings. We learned a lot about it in our school closures and how they were built and when and why. And then we closed schools, and then we have areas where there's new growth, and there's just, I think, a pattern naturally for humans to follow like the moment and kind of forget. So I keep saying it's challenging for me to think about building lots of new things when a mile or two away we have closed schools and, you know, changed whole school communities. And so I worry a little bit about our history getting lost in the decisions that will get made in the future. And so I'm glad that you've brought that up. I still worry about it. And yeah, but I think a lot of it is embedded in the concept of equity, so that we don't kind of have communities that kind of get left behind in the excitement of newness.
I just want to say thank you for this work. I know specifically the document that we review on the CAC every 3 years that Jeff and his team does is really helpful. And to your point, you know, Dr. Varda and Director Varda, there are going to be buildings that need new heaters, new boilers. Like, Tim Reed and Jeff Gatlin have that stuff tracked out. Like they know when we need to replace them and what those costs are. And when we have, it was enlightening to me in our last meeting, so many buildings that have those needs. Like there's going to be costs, but I'm really excited to see this kind of folded into the broader picture. And so I'm really excited for this work. And I think hopefully it will help us inform a lot of decisions on a less emotional, more data-based, more equitable basis.
I have a probably strange question. I'm trying to understand the difference between what you're providing for us, what you've done, the work you've done for us, versus what we're asking for in our RFP. Where's the dividing line between how far you go and where they pick things up?
I'll start, but you probably need to jump in. So our firm is an owner's representative firm. So we manage process, we manage projects, but we don't design anything, we don't build anything. And so we've been asked to help with this procurement piece and help Jeffco bring on board the right fit master planner firm. The master planning firm is most likely going to be a team of architects and engineers who are very well-versed experts in K-12 education. Hopefully within Colorado, we have a lot of great firms right here in the Denver metro area that I can think of off the top of my head. So those folks are the ones who are going to be doing the real heavy lift on preparing the document. And so once we get through that procurement, then I think staff gets to decide if they want to keep a role like what ours is throughout the process to just kind of keep guardrails on the architects and engineers.
So I can add a little bit. It's really important in a large project like this, which will end up with a large contract that you guys will probably end up having to approve. Similar to our ERP project that we're working on right now through the RFP process. You know what it's like what you put into it is what you get out of it. And so making sure that you get the RFP right, that you get everything that stakeholders are looking for, especially decision makers like me, you guys, Jeff's team, that making sure we get all the right things in the RFP and get that written accurately and captured everything that we feel like we need will help us make sure we get the right partners so that eventually we get the right product in the sort of master plan. So that's what these guys have been helping us do is get that ERP or RFP, different project, get that RFP to a place where it has all the stuff we want so that the vendors who are and partners who are applying to it are the right people. And we have a rigorous process for vetting them. And so am I explaining? Is that helpful, Mary?
So as far as we've got all this property that's not being used now, these vacant facilities, you guys didn't go look at them or evaluate them at all, right? But you're aware of them. So in our RFP, we would be acknowledging that we have a lot of facilities already that we probably aren't going to be building any totally new schools or new facilities, but we want to see if we can repurpose or what? How would you say? I guess I'm mostly just asking how does our available property fall into this?
Yeah, I think the property disposition and our vacant properties are sort of a side spur of this work. We're not including language specific about it in the RFPQ because that would be too specific. But once we engage with a strategic master planning partner, we would, that would certainly be part of our kickoff discussion with them to say, hey, we have this property. That's part of what we're thinking through. And that would be factored into how they approach the plan. But property disposition will continue to kind of run as its own process until we have a master planner engaged with us on creating that long-term plan.
You know, in our boundary study, Mary, I think this is a great question. And I think it is, like Director Varda was saying, I can't imagine building something after we just closed 21 properties. if you'll remember in the boundary study, there were some recommendations, not in the short term, but in the longer term, where we may have an articulation area that has, 4 elementary schools and they need 2 or they need 3. And the district could contemplate as part of a master plan closing 2 older schools that were built in the 1960s that, just aren't an equitable kind of experience for students who might be going to that school versus one of our newer builds from, the 2000s, just say. And closing 2 of those schools, and on one of those properties or a nearby property that the district owns, building a brand new school and combining those 2 schools into a new building in relation to this value around equitable facility access. So that's an example where I think some of the closure work, the property disposition work, the analysis of the land we own, the buildings we own, might come together in this planning process. That's an assumption on my part right now. I think part of this is that we have to trust the process and continue to talk about it along the way as we get an expert on board who can help us think through some of these unique challenges, especially the ones that are outlined in that boundary study. Does that help as an example?
Just wanted to follow up to that and your comment that you said it would be too specific. But given that, this is so important to us, this context, why is it too specific to put in the RFP that we want someone to demonstrate their ability to handle this complexity? You know what I mean? I just don't understand why that's too specific when it's such a massive factor for us, Sorry, maybe you didn't mean specific, but
yeah. So we have a draft put together, but one of the first steps is for a full inventory of all Jeffco properties. So as part of this study, they will see what is being utilized or vacant, what might still have structure on it, what doesn't, and evaluating those sites for would this make a good use for something. I don't know what that something is yet. So that's usually part of kind of a much higher view of a master plan. But then I think what would end up happening, at least in our experience, is that you would kind of drill down as far as you could go, high level, and then you would branch out, as Greg said, into a group maybe that studies workforce housing, and they would then run with that, or something of a subset to this that might be a different RFQP, or it could be maybe be done by that firm as an ad alternate. But so that will be evaluated, all of your sites and what's being used and what's not, and what good uses could be. But moving into what future use of those sites are is usually a little bit outside of a master plan, unless it's bullets of 10 different things that could be used for.
Just in your example, having a firm that has had experience with a subgroup that specializes or understands workforce housing, for example, isn't that the kind of competency we would want them to highlight in their application to us, so we know, they have the kind of thing we're interested in and experience in that?
So what we see in the market is that firms specialize in certain things, and I think what our task was on this was to cast a net to the K-12 experts and really look at educational facilities. We've tried Roaring Fork School District does a staff housing program in-house. They own it. They're landlords for staff. And when we had tried to kind of push all that stuff into a master plan, you weren't finding the firms with the right competencies who maybe do housing because they're experts in K-12 and vice versa. So I think step one is to really focus on the K-12 experts. And then if we continue over the few months and say, we need it for housing, or it needs to be a science center, whatever it is that maybe is outside of purview of K-12, then we can try to find those experts that can then augment the team. But I think that starting with the education piece and then looking at that as a subset later is probably what we would advise. But that's obviously up to the district and what we end up putting in there.
Yeah, I think also as part of the procurement process, we'll have an opportunity once we have responses to the RFQP to interview each of the firms that's, presenting a proposal to us. And I do think Dr. Vardy raised a point that it would certainly be something we might potentially ask about in that interview process to understand what their approach might be to working through that unique aspect of our facility portfolio. But regardless, no matter what firm we were to select, they're all going to look at the totality of our facility footprint and listen to our staff and our other stakeholders as we, shape the project with that partner. So certainly would be an included portion of it.
Yeah, two other things I might add. We're fortunate that Jeff Gatlin is from Roaring Fork and had the experience that Roaring Fork that was mentioned earlier. Thank you. And so he and I have had multiple conversations about that topic in particular. And I think he has a good issue spotting mind and past experience around that kind of thing and that innovative kind of approach with just workforce housing. But there are lots of different innovative approaches you can take with different properties. So that's good news. The second thing I would say is, we've got a lot of balls in the air, one of which is the property disposition process. And we've worked really hard at the direction of the board to make sure that that process is transparent, as collaborative as it can be, legally appropriate and on track. What we don't want to do is have this process sort of bleed into that process. I do think we want to keep those two things separate for now as we find our partner. And then I think eventually as the partner comes on board, if we have properties that have not yet been disposed of and have gone through the process, this process can inform our recommendations to the board about what might need to be surplused and what might not. We might not want to surplus. It's another reason why we're getting through this next round of properties. You guys have an executive session on Friday, and then I think we're kind of in a little bit of a let's go slow to go fast. Because if we can get this process kind of caught up a little bit to that, I think that we're going to be able to make some more informed recommendations to you. And we can talk more about that on Friday and in the future. But I think that's also why we're just trying to keep this in this K-12 space based on the process that these guys have gone through.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, for our next to last agenda item for the study this evening, the board will study a monitoring report on extraordinary student experiences. This agenda item provides the board an opportunity to revisit monitoring report board and 1.2. Every student will have access to extracurricular acceleration and enrichment opportunities, including art, music, and physical education, that was last presented in December 2023. As a reminder to the board and our listening public, the full monitoring report is available for review in board docs. Previous reports and discussion on this topic can be viewed in our board docs and live stream archives. Before I turn this over to Mr. Weiss, is there anything you'd like to add, Superintendent Dorland?
I am really excited for the board to hear this update from Mr. Simpson and Mr. Weiss. We believe, obviously, in instructional excellence in Jeffco, but we talk a lot about the extraordinary student experience. And we all know students, maybe they're our own, or maybe they're related to us in some way, or friends of our families, where they come to school every day for their orchestra class, right? Their theater experience. And those are the kinds of extraordinary experiences that actually get them through not only their days, but also their academics. And so I started this job in April of 2021, and we had so many conversations as we went through the tail end of the pandemic about the importance of athletics, the importance of theater, the importance of choir. We had families coming to public comment begging us to start these clubs and activities and athletics up again. And, it was difficult with some of the regulations that public health was putting on K-12, which we obviously wanted to respect and follow. But it had a huge impact on our kids. And our families felt that. We felt that. And so I'm just so pleased that we are now in a place where we're through that. And our kids are back in action. And as you'll see from the report, I think taking advantage of these extraordinary student experiences in really robust ways. And I appreciate the transparency these gentlemen have been able to provide for us with this report. And I'm going to hand it over again to Mr. Weiss.
Thank you. Yep. Dave Weiss, Chief of Schools, here to present with you Monitoring Report 1.2. I know that a lot of times when I'm here at the table, we talk about school leadership, and our office is the Office of School Leadership, which most people associate with community superintendents. But what you may not know is that Mr. Simpson and his division is also a part of our department. And so I'm going to have Patrick introduce himself, and then we'll jump into the monitoring report.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. So my name is Patrick Simpson. I'm Executive Director of Athletics and Activities. I have the best job in Jeffco. I would argue that against anybody. I get the opportunity to spend time with kids in, what I would argue is the best classroom because they all want to be there. They're 100% engagement. So my background is I had an opportunity to go through high school, and athletics got me through. I didn't gravitate towards loving school, and athletics is what kept me in it. Gave me an opportunity to play at the collegiate level. I met my beautiful wife, who's a college coach, and then became a high school teacher and coach and athletics director, and just get to spend an opportunity with so many amazing coaches and sponsors that do so much for our kids. I also have the opportunity to lead the crews that manage our stadiums. I support our athletics directors, our activities directors, and I have a team in our office who we're going to talk about. One of those amazing members here tonight throughout our presentation, who really provides a lot of direct support to me and activities directors directly. So again, thank you for the time, and I'm excited to get into this.
So a couple things. One, this report is not just about athletics and activities. There's a lot to this report that is also about acceleration opportunities and other things that we provide for students throughout our school days. Before I start, I really do want to give a shout out to a couple of departments that have really been supportive in terms of putting this report together. There's a lot of data, as you've probably already seen in the report, and really it took a team effort from our instructional data services team, teaching and learning, as well as our post-secondary workforce readiness team. It's really a team effort to put the report together. And I also want to shout out to our incredible educators and the hundreds of coaches and theater directors and band directors and choir directors and athletic and activity directors who really make this magic happen for our kids. A lot of this report is about high school, and there are some aspects of the report that touch on middle school and elementary school, but primarily what this board end asks for is related to the work that's happening at the high school level. And so you'll hear some of that, but if it wasn't for our coaches and our directors and educators out there making this happen for kids, I can't explain to you what it would mean if we weren't able to have some of these opportunities for our students. So we're going to go over the board end, our interpretation. We'll highlight the context. We've got a couple of bright spots that we'll lift up, and then we'll make the connections for you regarding what's on track and what we're working on in terms of focus acceleration. The great thing about doing these reports is that we did this in December, and since December, I'm excited to tell you there are a number of things we've either operationalized or we have underway because the report highlighted for us some things we needed to do to improve the district. So that's a really benefit there. Board end states that every student will have access to extracurricular and acceleration and enrichment opportunities, including art, music, and physical education. We interpret that to mean extracurricular activities for extended learning beyond academics, acceleration for advanced students, and enrichment for deeper curriculum understanding, all with a focus on equitable access for students regardless of background or abilities. The context in this case, extracurricular enrichment and acceleration opportunities are at the heart of the extraordinary student experience in Jeffco. Recognizing the diverse talents, interests, and needs of our student population, we're committed to providing this extraordinary experience in activities and enrichment and acceleration. We definitely work closely with a number of departments in Jeffco. So all of this, I want to be clear that all of this work really falls under many spokes of the Ed Center here and also at the building level. This certainly doesn't all fall under my department, but I'm really grateful for the people that put the work in to make sure that this is happening for our schools.
So some quick bright spots that are highlighted. A lot of data in the report for sure, but the one that stands out to me and that I like to brag about maybe the most is just our high volume of participation numbers. We continue to see that. As Superintendent Dorland highlighted, during COVID, we took some participation drops like every school across the country and district, but we've not only rebounded past that point, we've continued to see growth every year over the last 3 years. And so, which is, it makes me super proud of that and those opportunities for our kids. Additionally, we are, as a part of our focused acceleration from last year, was really taking a deep dive into our activities and how do we grow our activities programming. And so we've started to do some really initial data gathering of our activities at a level we've never done before. And what I'm starting to learn is it's even nationally, I'm not sure everybody's caught up to where we are, which made me a very, very proud leader of a department. And so we have some figures up on the screen there. Right now, our numbers are showing us at around 60+%, about 63% of our kids are engaged in a high school activity at some degree. And we're excited about that number because that's a really powerful and strong number. And I also am excited that there's opportunities of growth that we're already starting to identify, that we could even do it bigger and better. And so I'm really grateful for that. Additionally, I feel like I might be the worst district athletics and activities director in the world if I didn't highlight. We've got a couple amazing things already this year that have taken place. We had a unified theater program at Lakewood High School who received an award from Lakewood Mayor for their inspirational achievements and the work that they do, which was an unbelievable award that's already happened here in the first few months of the school year, as well as yesterday we had our first state champion. Evergreen High School won the 3A golf championship, and one of our students, Tyler Long, was a back-to-back state champion. Just as of about almost a little under 26 hours ago. So I had to brag about that and why I'm here. So.
And earlier tonight we talked about belonging, and one of the most important ways that we create belonging in our high schools in particular is through athletics and activities. And tonight I can speak from personal experience. My son's a freshman this year at Bear Creek, and he joined the soccer team and did the summer workouts. And his experience starting school, I assure you, was different because he was already connected to a group of students that he knew in the building. And now he's playing junior varsity soccer, which is really exciting for him and for us. And I can just tell you that his experience, that transition to high school was automatic for him because he had that opportunity. And I think that's true for so many of our kids. It's important to note that some of these numbers are duplicative. Like we have kids that are involved in athletics and activities. So this doesn't mean that we have 26,000 kids that are involved in athletics and activities. There are some numbers that are overlapping, but like Patrick said, close to 60% of our students engage in an athletic or an activity at the high school level, which is a big deal. And so, again, a huge shout out to our coaches and activity sponsors who provide those opportunities for our students. In addition to athletics and activities, we've got some other really great bright spots. You saw one of them earlier tonight, the Jeffco Student Leadership Board. We've really worked hard as an organization to create more student leadership opportunities. And so JSLB is only one of those opportunities. We also have Latinos in Action happening in 3 of our high schools. We have peer mentoring programs in both our middle and our high schools. We have the Indigenous Student Council. We have career technical and student organizations. And you guys saw today the career fair for our 10th graders. So those student leadership opportunities, we continue to expand those as we're working to improve the district. We've also, in December, we highlighted for you that there were some gaps and we needed to increase enrollment in AP and IB courses. I'm happy to report that we've already demonstrated an increase, particularly in AP courses and concurrent enrollment courses. We're excited about that. And then I shared a statistic with you earlier tonight about the industry certifications, going up around 35%, which is a big deal. Again, providing more industry certifications allows students to potentially walk out of high school and into a job that can potentially create an income for them, whether or not college is what they want to do. So we've got a few on-track items here, and then we're going to use the word operationalized, I think, within here because some of what we shared with you in December, we've actually now operationalized, and I'm pretty excited about that too. Patrick's going to kick us off.
Yeah, so high school athletics and activities, again, our numbers continue to grow, which we're very proud of. But we also, when we look at our numbers, not only in Jeffco we're proud of, but we remain a leader in the state of Colorado due to our size. And even with our metro area kind of peer districts of general size, our participation numbers still trend at the upper end or at the leader of that, which again, I'm very proud of the work that our staff is doing. Additionally, we continue to offer everything that is a CHASA sanctioned sport for our kids. At whether that's co-oping programs, whether that's kids attending, ice hockey is a great example of that, where we don't have enough kids at every single school, but our kids come together at different schools and participate on teams. And so we continue to offer everything that we could possibly offer. And then another huge celebration and a thank you to this group is last year we spent a great deal of time my team working with a committee that we assembled of coaches and then a second committee of activities sponsors and staff to just get a sense of what was working in Jeffco from a compensation perspective. What did we like? Conducting a market analysis of where we stood in the metro area. Where could we propose systemic change? And one of the things we identified right away through that collaborative process was we had an opportunity because everybody kind of was aligned in a system as big as ours with as many variables. I would never say 100% aligned, but we had such positive momentum and alignment towards making some huge systemic changes that I really believe set us up for years to come and to grow and to really value our programming, especially on the activities side. And so we were able to create a joint proposal and really bring that through to negotiations, which obviously, as you know, you all approved and the committees approved and JCEA. And I'm so thankful for those committees and thankful for that work. The reports we've been getting initially from coaches this fall that I think initially that weren't in the weeds with the work were very appreciative of the idea. But once they actually saw numbers and how they could support assistant coaches and how they could add additional assistant coaches to be able to support kids and develop a relationship with kids and grow our programs, the feedback has been incredible. And so I'm very proud of that work and thankful for all that.
Some other items that are on track. High School Reimagine. You've heard about High School Reimagine over the last year and a half. And at the moment, High School Reimagine is in a really good place. We've got several schools that are engaging in durable skills conversations. We've got a pilot program going right now that's supported by 4 schools down south. And so High School Reimagine is right on track and really is designed to help support our students beyond high school as well as during high school. Enrichment learning opportunities also on track. We've got art, music, and PE available to students K through 12 in Jeffco. And we believe deeply in that offering to our students. We also have band and orchestra beginning in 5th grade for our students, where they can engage with world languages available in our middle schools as well as our high schools. And so these programs are on track. We've got a great division here at the Ed Center who helps support all of those teachers out in the buildings in terms of delivering strong academic programming in art, music, and PE. AMP inventory, we brought this to you in December, letting you know we were on track. We're actually completed. We didn't have a section for completed, but this is completed at this point. We've purchased inventory for the AMP programs in our district. It was a $2 million investment to ensure that every art, music, and PE teacher had the resources they needed to teach their classes appropriately. Also adapted PE and athletics and activities. Yep. Actually, we should maybe add that on there, like adapted theater. We've got really great adapted athletic programs in our buildings, and we've got adapted PE as well in our schools that support students with severe special needs. We'll actually touch back on this in our focus acceleration as well, because not every school that has an SSN program has adapted athletics, and so that's something we're going to be working on. And then access and acceleration opportunities. We have increased enrollment in AP and concurrent enrollment courses in Jeffco. IB is a little bit slower, but IB is also a much smaller availability from a school standpoint. There are only a few schools that offer IB, and so our numbers aren't as impressive there. But as far as AP and concurrent enrollment go, we've seen a nice increase in those. Some of that has come from schools offering new AP courses that they didn't previously offer that are really interesting to students. Some are like in the AP Arts, for example. There are quite a few interesting AP offerings that are kind of coming out of our high schools.
Hey, Dave, can I jump in really quick? I just want to highlight a couple things. Number one, Olivia Dorland is in an AP art class at Golden High School. So I will, as a mom, testify that those classes and those opportunities for kids, they mean a lot to our students who are trying something on for size outside of their academic programming. And then the other thing I would just ask the board is, it's an ask of you, I guess, if you could please sign up and work with Jennifer to attend one of our adaptive athletics events. Number one, it will fill your bucket. It's really special. And number two, I would like to make sure that whoever's running that event knows that they're there, and that any board member who attends an event at any of those upcoming events, that we announce that they're there and they have an opportunity to waive. I think it means a lot to our special education families and our students to know how much you all care about this experience for them and that equity piece. So if we could just, I encourage you to try to find time. I love going to those events. I haven't been to one yet this year, but I know we're getting a couple on my calendar. And I do think it's important for our special education community to know how much you all support them and care about those events. So highly recommended.
Mm-hmm. And it's an opportunity for students who may not be able to participate in traditional sports to get a letter, wear a Letterman's jacket. I mean, it's really cool. It will fill your bucket. It definitely will.
The nerdy educator in me loves just the connection to the academic piece of that program. Like when you talk about, a final assessment of a class, what better way to do that than an actual live competition for kids that maybe don't always get that like competitive outlet. For those less familiar with it, like a really quick summary of adapted athletics is those students. So flag football is this month, October 15th is our event. This month, they work on flag football in their PE class. So the fundamental skills, the rules of the game, like the movements, those things. And it's tiered. It's like a tier 1 with students with disabilities, but still have better movement capabilities. And then we have tier 2 that is more wheelchair bound students in the SSN program, that they all work on those same skills and the same rules and the same content. And then they gather at Trailblazer Stadium and they have a live competition, which is just an unbelievable event.
There you go. That's your first calendar invite. Moving on, we've got a couple other things that are on track. Post-secondary workforce readiness. You've heard about some of this through High School Reimagine. You heard about it a little bit earlier as well. But the work that we're doing around career tech ed and industry certification is pretty powerful. A lot of it, I think, a lot of people believe that it was primarily at Warren Tech, and that's where we did that work. But the truth is, we're doing this work in many of our comprehensive high schools, as well as Warren Tech. And so the industry certification increase that you've seen really isn't just at Warren Tech. That's some of that's happening in our high schools. And those teachers are required to have a lot of training and certification. And so it's great that we've got educators in our system that are getting additional certifications to be able to teach NCTE and industry certs. And so really great acceleration there. Like I said, 500 industry certification increase this year, which is a big deal. Math acceleration, we adopted illustrative math, as you know. This has allowed us to lean more heavily into how we're accelerating on the math front. And some of that you may see in our middle schools, for example, like a 6-7 accelerated math. But illustrative math is actually supporting our teachers and having the resource they need to be able to accelerate math where they'd like to. And so we're seeing some really great results with our math, as you saw with our 8th grade math scores. We saw some big jumps, and we believe that that comes right out of the work that we've done with our teachers in that resource. And then the Jeffco Student Leadership Board, who you met earlier tonight, and really that work, what we've seen you all saw it. I don't have to tell you too much more about this, really. I mean, what you saw tonight is what we're seeing as well. Like, this is a group of students that really care about Jeffco, and they care about each other. And they're a great, diverse representation of our students, not just from a demographic standpoint, but also from the schools that they represent, the communities that they come from. And what they are bringing, not just to you all, but to us, the cabinet team, and to other leadership groups. We've had the Jeffco Student Leadership Board out in front of staff as well. And they're really enhancing our ability to run the district. And I think that I know that there was a question about them potentially having some more engagement with the board. And I think that that's a great idea. And that's something I know Tara will work on to hopefully make happen. A couple of items that we think are challenges that we'd like to touch on here. First, we've got, actually, is this one you? No, this is me. All right. We're really working to expand career technical service organizations. And so CTSOs, for short, are organizations like FBLA or FCCLA or DECA in our high schools. Some of our high schools have more access to CTSOs than others. And so when a CTSO is in place in a school in a really effective way, it's actually like a co-curricular. So it's taught as a class during the day, and then they compete in the evenings, not a lot of evenings, but there are competitions that they can attend. And sometimes those are also really specialized teachers who have to have certain CTE certifications to be able to run a CTSO. And so we really do want to expand access to CTSOs across more schools in Jeffco, particularly in some of our more underserved schools where we don't have as many opportunities for CTSOs. And so that's something that we're really working to accelerate. Some other ongoing action items. Actually, I'm going to let Patrick talk about this one. This is one of our more exciting sort of announcements of the new activities director that we've added. It's not the bullet up there. Yeah.
So one of the focus accelerations from last year was, again, that the access to activities and just promoting it and supporting it and pushing it the same way we do on the athletic side. It was something I was passionate about, and it aligns to our board and our leadership. And so we added an assistant director of activities per this analysis last year to my department to provide really intensive support to our activities directors to help grow programming at the high school levels, which we've seen immediate success is from just a systems and structures and support standpoint. But we also, our schools are big, and there's a lot of different programming, and there's a lot of different layers of programming. Athletics, generally speaking, there's levels, the varsity, the JV, the freshman levels. But they're all generally, if you go to one school's football program, it's generally structurally the same as others. When we look at the activity space, there are really competitive high-level activities happening. And then at another school down the street, it may be much more of a club-based experience where it's less competitive, less time, requires less of a commitment, and it's more of just a belonging type exercise, and then everything in between. And so we've started to gather data across our system around what opportunities exist at what schools, what students are capitalizing on those opportunities, and where are the potential strategic moves that we can make to be able to better grow those opportunities for all of our kids. So an example of that would be the hockey example that I used in athletics, is that we don't have the resources from a facility standpoint. We don't have the participation numbers to have a hockey program in every school. So we've created systems where kids can go play at multiple schools. Are there activities where that makes sense, especially regionally based with some of where our schools are at? Does it make sense where we need to just pour more resources in and find the right person and hire the right staff to be able to grow a program? And there's probably endless other opportunities in there to grow our activities programming. And so we don't have that all these strategic answers yet, but the work is taking place, and I'm so excited about it because we're already starting to see ways where we've aligned our SPA team that Dave highlighted earlier that provides support to our theater teachers, our music teachers, and aligning the work that they're doing with what we're doing. And how do we take that even down to the teacher, how do we support teacher professional development, and how that can then grow into programming opportunities outside of the classroom. And so endless amounts of possibilities, and I'm really excited about that work.
And on that front, earlier we showed you a slide that had activities participation. I don't know if you remember in December, but I couldn't give you that number. And so that it's a step in the right direction. As you can see, the next bullet is really about an activities and athletics dashboard. Before I go there, though, I do want to highlight also one of the other benefits of having this assistant director of activities is it's not constrained to high school. So athletics is a high school thing in Jeffco. We don't have middle school athletics. It's something we certainly are interested in, potentially making happen. But activities exist in middle school, and so this assistant director of activities is actually currently meeting with all the middle school principals to gather an inventory of what's happening in our middle schools in terms of clubs. And we're thinking about how can we potentially be feeders for programs like these CTSOs, for example. And so we're pretty excited about next time we have this report for you, we're going to have all kinds of new stuff. So
the other reality in that space, the truth is with that alignment, is if we have a really, really dynamic educator that has all the resources required, they have great alignment with their middle schools and elementaries, and so they see that. And so those kids in that area get that experience where we're seeing in other pockets that doesn't exist. And so this work that we're engaging in right now is to create that, right? What support do we need to train that staff? What resources are they lacking? What strategic, support do they need to be able to grow that experience so that all of our kids have that same organic growth through elementary, middle, and high on those activities areas?
So next bullet is an athletics and activities data collection dashboard, which is actually on the list. And so not created yet, but one of the areas that we'd like to be able to collect some data is not just around who is participating in athletics, but what's the impact on their academic experience. So, how much more engaged are they in school? How are they staying out of trouble? How are they attending? Things like that, because those connections are really important, and we think that there are really strong connections, but we also want to be able to demonstrate that as we share about this. Another challenge for us is adaptive athletics doesn't actually exist in every school that has an SSN program, and it should. And so that's an initiative for us right now, is we're really working with our schools to figure out why in some of the schools we don't have those programs. We do have adapted PE in those schools, but we don't have the athletic program. And so we're going to be doing some work with those schools this year to understand why some of them haven't engaged. Or in some cases, we have schools that were engaged and now are not, and we think it may be related to the sponsor or the coach that would be doing that. And so we're going to be looking into that to make sure we believe that should be in every one of our schools that has a SSN program. Increased participation in AP, IB, and or concurrent enrollment. And this one, it's in the challenges because you saw it in on-track. We've increased participation. Where we're not increasing participation quickly enough is in our underserved communities. And so a challenge for us and a focused acceleration for us is to find ways to better offer these opportunities across all of our schools. And if they're not available in the school, is there a way we can get a student to a program that does offer that? And so for us, this is a challenge that we're going to be looking into and really continuing to work on as we want to expand these opportunities. And in this last one, establish stronger criteria for high school pathway creation and development. For those of you that have been around for a while, we've had high schools who have a teacher that gets really excited about a program and then wants to bring it to their school. And in some cases, that's happened over the years, over the last 20 years. And so we have some schools where a pathway was created that was very person dependent. It depended on that teacher, and then they retired, and then it was difficult to maintain that pathway. And so, and we also have people who are currently interested in potentially bringing programs into our school. And right now, through the High School Reimagine work, we're trying to create a stronger criteria for how to bring a pathway into a school. Like, what's the demand for it? What's the sustainability of it? What resources does it take to create the pathway? And so we've actually asked our high schools to pause on adding pathways right now as we are in the midst of this High School Reimagine project, in part because it's not like a forever ban. This is just a pause because we want to create a criteria that helps us make sure that if we do bring a pathway into a program, for one, there's a need. For two, there's a real benefit to students. Three, that the resources are manageable and something we can get there, and the sustainability is there. And so it's not just dependent on this person versus it being something that's built into the school structure. And so we're working to build a criteria related to pathway creation in high schools. So there you go. That's our well, I click there you go. Now you know it's question time.
Great, thank you so much. Questions, comments?
I'll just say thank you. This work's super important. And as the kid that was the speech and debate DECA FBLA kid, I appreciate that. There is that focus there and the try to expand that and into middle school, because I think part of the magic of middle school is having access to these things. So thank you.
I'm really grateful that you brought up the support for middle school activities, and I'm thankful that we also have that activities support for not just high schools, but also middle schools. I recently visited Evergreen High School and heard about their sort of vocal choir and theater rebuild that they're working on, and how they're trying to share staff between middle school and high schools to support having a pipeline, because they had such amazing engagement in elementary school, like choir and music programs. And then through the pandemic, that sort of middle school part of it fell away. And so they are rebuilding now, but they're really, really grateful for the additional supports, in particular for their performing arts up in Evergreen. And I just wanted to lift that up because I think, that's really recent work that that has been implemented and is already getting really good feedback from community. So I wanted to share. Thank you for that. And for all of the other work that you do with our clubs and activities and our student population to keep them engaged and interested. Really grateful. It's so, so important. Actually, I do have one more question. Can I ask? I'm curious about when a new coach shows up at a school, whether they've been recruited from the community, or if they're a parent, what type of preparation do they get prior to joining a coaching staff, or what sort of is there training that they need to go through? Or
Yeah, so there's a couple layers of that. So CHASA at the state level has their coaching requirements that they have we have aligned with as well, and then we've expanded on. So they take concussion training, first aid, CPR. There's a coach's course, like a first year coach's course. It's a little bit rules based to make sure you don't do things to accidentally violate rules because you're new and you maybe don't know. But then it's also about how do you engage with kids and work with kids at a very entry level for sure. And so there's definitely those, and obviously when the hiring practice is going through the, background checks, fingerprinting, and all that kind of stuff as they come on board. And then each of our schools' athletics directors really build out their professional development plan for their school. Some of those are a little bit more school-based, like the whole athletic department is working on, how do we engage and communicate with difficult or frustrated families, right? As any of us that have kids of youth sports, you're very passionate about that. And so how do we work to support those families and those kids through adversity and challenges? And so maybe that's a whole department thing, where some schools maybe break it down more through their program specific, that, program X really needs to be focusing on this. And so it's kind of differentiated that way.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm just curious, as a former coach myself, but not in Jeffco, wondering what the onboarding is like for somebody who's stepping into that position. Thanks.
We also, the head coaches and the athletic directors also do a lot of filtering a little bit about, we are competitive high school athletics, so not everybody that comes really has got the requisite skill set to maybe coach at a higher level, but we have other opportunities, at maybe lower levels or, more club opportunities, that kind of stuff. So there is that level of filtering as well.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, this is like adjacent related, but I'm going to connect the dots on two things. An experience I had this week where my daughter went on an orchestra field trip, and I went to fill out the absent form that we've created for our kids. And I have it open because the choices that I got to pick for her being absent were that she had an appointment, bereavement, flu, mental health, which I love that was an option, sick, sports, transportation, or vacation. And so I picked sports. And then I wrote a note that said, my child is not on sports. She's on a music trip. But it says sports only, so I'm putting her in that category because it feels like it's not comprehensive and representative of our amazing program. I didn't say all those words, but I said I'm picking sports intentionally because you don't have music.
Yeah.
So I'm just connecting the dots on that form. I know we just rolled it out, and I love the form. It's amazing, actually, to be able to do absences that way. But we need to call out all these other programs in our absentee forms. And I didn't think transportation represented music, so didn't pick that. Now let me not submit this. I had to start doing it to make the form come up, but yeah. Your whole point that it's not just all sports, and our kids, I don't have a kid in sports, but I have kids who do a lot of these other things, so it'd be nice to share that.
I recently went to a football game for Highlands Ranch, and I went to a stadium, I think it was called Halftime Help. It blew me away. It was an amazing stadium, and it's called Powered by Student Athletes. So when I think about that, I'm also thinking about the presentation we just had on the strategic capital asset planning. Are you guys, I hope, very involved in our dream plan? I represent the south of Jeffco, and so I know there's been a big push to get some kind of football stadium down there. Also, I like to bring up all the time, Conifer would love to have a swim pool, just like Arvada. So, yes, well, they want the theater, but they also want a swimming pool. Yes. Wow. Just like Arvada. Anyway, I'm just saying these opportunities are great. I'm so happy that we have so many students in it, but I know there's a little inequity in the facilities that are available in the district. So are you guys going to work with the long-term planning, and then we'll find the money. So
That's the best thing I've ever heard from my position. So no, absolutely. So I actually met with the team as a part of the initial work. I've met with Jeff and his team as well. And so absolutely 100% a part of that. Yeah, and I'd love to talk about it anytime if anybody's interested.
First, we need a new track and a new parking lot at NAC.
No track, just a parking lot.
So
we are definitely partnering closely with facilities. There are and we have a lot more facilities, I think, than some people realize. You know, we just put a new field down at Trailblazer, which it's a beautiful field, and facilities is great to work with, and you know, we try to really prioritize. Like, we need a girls' locker room at the NAC, actually, on the soccer, a boys and girls' locker room at the soccer field part of the NAC, and so there's something we know we need in some of these facilities, but they're really great to work with. I mean, if you've ever been over to Lakewood Memorial, which is right behind the open school, it's a really great field. Patrick is super proud of it. It's like a hybrid field or something like that.
We're going to go there. Okay, so it's honestly one of the only fields in the country the way it's designed. So it's designed as a half turf field underneath, and then it has grass, a natural grass surface that grows above it. And so the idea behind that is when a chunk comes out of it, that it holds for play, and you wouldn't necessarily see it the same way you would on a grass surface. So extremely proud of our facilities. But to your point, we got aging facilities in places just like everywhere in the district as a part of there's a lot going on facilities wise, but I've been very thankful that the team has been so engaging with us.
Patrick, can I insert just real quick? Since you did mention about facilities, you guys probably haven't heard, or at least I hope you have, and maybe you just haven't said anything about it at this point, but it has been the theme of my last 3 weeks. As schools are starting to turn on their lights, I am getting text messages and emails of thanks for the new facility lights and capabilities. So I want to make sure you guys are getting that gratitude as well, because we are getting them. I got a picture the other night of one of our high schools that said, first time we turned on our lights, and they sent it to me. So just want you guys to know they're very appreciative.
We've given Patrick and Dr. Kim all the credit on that one with our high school principals, and they love these two because it does extend the life of the field for so many of our student participants in band and football, and because football rules the world, by the way.
We actually detail on that as we turn on tomorrow at 9:00. We have our user training for our ADs, and they will be accessible to all schools and ready to rock and roll tomorrow at 9:00. So very excited about that.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great presentation, and I'm looking forward to wonderful things. All right, thanks. For the last item on our agenda this evening, the board will receive a preview of the October 17th consent agenda. As a reminder to the board and our listening public, Superintendent Dorland will be providing a preview of items for board action anticipated to appear as individual action items or on the consent agenda at our regular meeting next week. I'll now hand it over to Superintendent Dorland.
Great. Thank you, President Parker. I do want to thank the board for requesting this. I think this has been very helpful for me. I've heard from a couple of you it's been helpful as well, but just to preview what we're about to go into next week. And then we've received some questions from board members prior to board materials being posted on Friday for your consent, and we've been able to adjust those materials to meet your needs. And so I just want to thank you for giving me this time during your study sessions to review this. You will have an approval of the monitoring report 1.2. This attachment is in your board docs for this agenda item. You reviewed that in the study session tonight, so that shouldn't be new. There will be an approval of the Jefferson County School Finance Corporation Director appointments. You had an executive session with our bond counsel, Kim Crawford, who is recommending this as a requirement for some of our reporting for previous financial decisions that were made by boards previous to you. And so that's going to be on your consent agenda as well. And there'll be associated materials explaining what it is and why we have it there. We will have the approval of the updated Board of Ed calendar for this school year. It's being updated because you are adding an executive session this Friday for the purpose of discussing property disposition and possible actions. And so we just are updating that. You're just making a decision to update that, but that's after. I'm looking at your faces and realizing what you're realizing in the moment. Julie, maybe prior to the executive session, as they open the meeting publicly, they can make revisions to their board calendar before the executive session. Does that sound good? Does that sound good, board members? Yeah, because you wanna revise the calendar prior to the actual meeting happening. We have publicly noticed it. It's been live since last Friday, but just going ahead and taking action prior to going into that meeting would probably be good. It just, yeah, okay. So that's not going to be on your consent agenda because you will have already taken care of that. I'm sorry I missed that before talking to you guys tonight. We are also going to be approving, the board will also be approving a Warder Elementary School easement with the city of Arvada as part of the pool project. They need some access to some land on the Warder property to support redesign and renovation of parking lots. So that will be in your consent agenda. It was part of the original agreement when the plans were made and is not something surprising or new. It's just timely. Supplemental funds notification, you regularly approve grants that come our way in terms of being able to allocate and expense those funds. And so you'll see we have two grants, one in the amount of $508,000 and one in the amount of $200,000. There'll be information about those grants and what they're allowing us to do as an organization in your materials. There's a new member that you'll be appointing to the Financial Account Advisory Committee. And you will be doing a contract renewal with an audiovisual company that provides equipment not to exceed $1.2 million for a 20-month contract term. And it's basically so that we can purchase interactive flat panels and accessories for those panels. You'll also see on the next page a graph of how much we've been investing historically and how much we expect to possibly invest this year, that maximum amount of $1.2 million. This will be a not to exceed contract, and it is basically the funds will be coming from school budgets as well as department budgets who want to purchase interactive panels for classrooms or conference rooms, offices, shared spaces, and the orders will be placed centrally so we can take advantage of a bigger contract and a more quantity. And so we're not sure how many of our schools or departments will opt in, but we're thinking a contract not to exceed 1.2 should suffice.
What are you talking about as a flat panel, as opposed to the Mimeo boards and so forth?
It's like a Mimeo board.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But it's interactive. So like in our classrooms, when you go in and you see teachers kind of touching things with their pen or moving things around or kids doing problems with their finger on the board, that's what the flat panels are for, and they're interactive.
And so I have noticed them, and some schools have them, but not all schools. And then I was under the impression most of them had to purchase them themselves.
They do at this point in time.
Yes. So this would be for the district to use them?
No, it's allowing schools to continue that purchase if they either need to replace them or if they don't have them in all their classrooms and they want to add to their classrooms. Yeah, Mary, I think this is something I'll add to the conversation is this, I'll make a connection to the master plan conversation. You noticed that IT was part of the list of considerations in this planning we want to do going forward. Historically in Jeffco, a concern that I have had is that our capital planning has not included two areas that I think are critical. One is safety upgrades, facility safety upgrades, and two is IT types of products. Now we have our device program for students that has been managed by the district and is supported with mill-levy overrides, all that. But we've not necessarily said the district has an equitable and sufficient process to upgrade and make sure there are the same types of access to technology in every classroom. We've made huge headway with safety, where we now have secured vestibules in every school, those kinds of things. But I do think we need to have more of a systemic refresh for things like technology in the classroom, as well as safety upgrades like cameras, Raptor systems that screen visitors, those kinds of things. Those are active conversations that we've been having and formulating some vision around what a more systematized district-wide refresh would look like. And that information is part of what Jeff knows we want to have in the capital plan. So this should be more systemic, I think, as the next few years unfold and we have this capital plan built out.
Sounds good. Anybody else? No. All right. That brings us to the end of today's agenda. We will stand adjourned. Our next scheduled meeting of the board is an executive session scheduled for 2:30 p.m. on October 11th at the Ed Center. Meeting adjourned.